ease, and for many eastern parts actually the end of the night turned largely dry and clear, so could just see temperatures dip into single figures here, further west holding up into double figures. So potentially a bright start across the east on Tuesday, but it won't last. The band of rain across the west will spread its way eastwards across many parts of the UK. Some heavy rain again across parts of southern Scotland and Northern Ireland, but it will turn brighter but showery come the afternoon for Northern Ireland. And for all of us, I think temperatures at best generally only climbing up to around average, but factor in the breeze and rain, it will feel a little bit cooler than that.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Coming up next, it is Britain's Newsroom.
Ta-da! That's
with
us.
Dawn Newsome and me, Tom Harwood.
Bank holiday special includes cheese.
It does include cheese and travel chaos, much more besides. Did you know that there's a general election on? We might even touch on that too.
Have we mentioned that yet?
I don't think we have.
I don't think we need to talk about that. No one else is. Why should we bother?
The latest GB News travel.
I'm Andy Hilbert with the latest on the roads across the UK. In Derbyshire, the southbound M1, traffic slow due to an earlier emergency repairs. This is going to affect junction 25 for Nottingham and Derby to junction 24 for Nottingham South and the East Midlands Airport. In Essex, the anti-clockwise M25, a lane closed on the exit slip road due to a broken down lorry at junction 26 for Waltham Abbey. And in the West Midlands, a southbound M5, a lane closed on the exit slip road due to emergency repairs at junction 3 for Birmingham. Also as well in Kent, the coastbound M20, delays and a speed restriction there due to Operation Brock. That's going to affect your junction 8 for Leeds Castle and Maidstone services to junction 9 at Ashford, and also as well in South Lanarkshire in the Blantyre area, East Kilbride Expressway. The road is now clear. There was an accident there near to Glasgow Road. That's the latest. You're up to date.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The most sexiest man in the UK at the moment, as voted for by a dating website, is that man on your screen, Jeremy Clarkson. I'm sorry, Peter, I know he's a man of a certain age, but I'm not getting this one.
Oh, you're not?
No.
This is another reason for an old wrinkly like me to be deeply joyous. Hope springs eternal. He's grey-haired, he's balding, he's got a bit of a pot belly, he's quite tall. You know, I reckon I might be in with half a shower.
As long as only hope springing eternal, love. What do you make of this one?
Yeah, I agree with you. A lot of guys watching this will really be a bit befuddled as to how he's the sexiest guy. I think it's a sympathy vote.
No, I get it. I understand it.
But he's got a sense of humour, and he's got plenty of money.
But what's there to understand? How is he the sexiest man?
I'll tell you why. Because he's and I say this as a bloke, he's a man's man. He gets stuck in, he's involved, he's practical, he's physical.
Does that make him
funny,
sexy, though?
He's got money. I think men these days are, if you ask me, too effeminate. And women don't want that. Women, well, I don't know what...
What do women want? Go on, just mansplain to me what women want. Go on, thank you very much. No, this is voted for by it's an illicit dating website, OK?
Oh, is it an affairs website?
Married women. But Idris Elba came third.
I just think Jez he's a man's man. He, like I said, he's physical, he gets involved, he likes a beer, he's got plenty of money. How much did he get for the farm on Amazon?
That's so silly. So you're implying women only go for men with money?
Well, no, but I mean...
He did, didn't he? Just said that, yeah. He's got plenty of money, so it's sexy.
It's normal for women to want to be with a man who can look after them, no?
No. Will you stop mansplaining what women want?
My mum had an expression, Ben. She said, when you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. But trust me, if Idris Elba gets himself a pair of wellies, he'll be second next year.
It's 9:30 on Monday the 27th of May. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Tom Harwood, and Dawn Newsome.
We got that right. We got the names right. Now, royals to face national service. Under the Prime Minister's new plans, Prince George, Louis and Princess Charlotte will have to spend a year in the military or volunteer in the community.
Trust and security. That's what Labour will be pledging today as Keir Starmer gives his first keynote speech of the election. Fascinating.
I can't wait. Meanwhile, equally fascinating, a Lib Dem landslide. Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davies says his party is getting the best response from voters it's ever received for a generation.
That's at least 3 votes. And bank holiday travel turmoil. Have you been held up on the road, rail or airports this weekend? Well, let us know and get in touch.
Because it is bank holiday. And good news if you're in Southampton. You've been promoted. The Saints beat Leeds 1-0 in the Championship playoff final, and they earned $180 million for doing so. Sorry, Leeds fans, though.
And of course, this show is nothing without you. Please do get in touch. We want to hear what you think about all the stories we're talking about today.
By visiting GBNews.com, you'll say you can tell us exactly what you... It's not about what he thinks. Funny enough, he thinks it is, but it's not. It's about what you think.
Wish it were, but it's not.
I know. Yeah. But should we get some news headlines first?
Should we do that?
Yeah.
Let's go to Tamsin Roberts.
Tom, thanks very much and good morning from the GB Newsroom. It's 9:31. In his first keynote speech of the general election campaign, Sir Keir Starmer will say economic, border and national security will form the bedrock of the Labour Party's manifesto. His speech comes as Labour and the Conservatives clash over who will best protect the country. It follows Rishi Sunak's announcement of plans to introduce compulsory national service. The Prime Minister has also committed to raise defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2030. Foreign Office Minister Anne-Marie Trevelyan says the Tories want to make sure Britain is secure.
The rest of the world is in a really rough place at the moment. And we've got to make sure, and that's the work that we do through NATO, the incredible leadership that the UK shows, why it is that we believe these things are important to stand up for. So I'm very surprised by anyone who thinks that those values, defending those values, ensuring our young people are resilient as individuals and as part of a community is something that they would think isn't a good thing.
Police investigating the fatal stabbing of a woman on a Bournemouth beach have released CCTV images of a hooded suspect. A 34-year-old woman was pronounced dead on Durley Chine Beach on Friday night, whilst another woman was hospitalised with serious injuries. A 17-year-old boy was arrested on suspicion of murder and remains in custody. Dorset police are urging anyone who recognises the person in the CCTV picture to get in touch urgently. Melanoma skin cancer cases in the UK are at an all-time high, with nearly 21,000 expected to be diagnosed this year. Cancer Research UK says rates of melanoma have increased by almost a third over a decade. It's understood there's been an upward trend in cases in all ages, but the biggest rise has occurred in adults over 80. Cancer Research says around 17,000 cases every year are preventable. A Cancer Research spokesperson said all skin types can get melanoma. Well, for all the latest stories, do sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Dawn and Tom.
A very good morning to you. Welcome to Britain's Newsroom here on GB News with me, Tom Harwood. And Dom Neeson.
And happy bank holiday. It is a bank holiday. Hope you're having a wonderful time out there. And the weather's a bit grim, so you might as well just sit and keep us company here, because we're going to have some fun.
Absolutely. So stay indoors, watch your television, don't go outside. It's almost like it's April 2020 all over again.
I know, absolutely, yeah. But keep socially distanced, remember.
Yeah, we've got 2 metres, isn't it?
Was it 2 metres?
You know, I was at an event yesterday where Ed Davey was launching the Lib Dem battle.
Oh, my God,
pass.
yes, I saw that.
And there was this town hall in Cambridgeshire. And we went in and they were offering us journalists cups of tea, which was very lovely of them.
Very, very.
And I walked into the hall, and there were all these signs saying, keep 2 metres apart.
You're joking me still?
Still, they just hadn't taken them down. It's been 4 years.
Wasn't there a story the other week, Tom, where they said that we've really got to... It's not good for our mental health to keep being confronted by all these signs. It's very triggering for some of us. I mean, our supermarket has still got those footprints down the aisles, you know?
Me.
It's like telling grown people how to walk down a supermarket aisle. It's just like... make it stop.
You've got the signs on the pavement all over. In lots of places in central Cambridge, they're all because they painted them on pretty officiously and they haven't scraped them off. So just as time goes on, footprints are wearing them away, and they stand there like the statue of Ozymandias, once king of kings. Look on my works, ye mighty in despair. Nothing besides remains.
What are you talking about?
I was just doing some poetry, but
Oh, right, poetry. I'm going to talk about football because I know a lot more about football than I do about poetry. And we've got someone who knows even more, and that's the wonderful Paul Coit, who's going to tell us about a few little games that happened over the weekend. Coity?
Well, I do, but Ozymandias, he was the lead singer of Deep Purple, wasn't he? Wasn't that him? Had his own TV show. Sharon and that, isn't that him?
I'm talking Tennyson.
Yes, that's it. No, we're not talking Tennyson. We're going to talk football instead. Football Sun. OK, there we go.
Didn't Tennyson play for Villa at one point?
Yes, he did. He was left back. Yeah. Oh, no, he was a fullback. Fullback with Bolton Wanderers.
Shall we talk about the FA Cup final?
Yes, we can. We can talk about Manchester United, and I mean, it was a surprise, really, that Manchester United managed to beat Manchester City, because Man United have had this awful season, and we've got Erik ten Hag, as you know, I know a manager you're very familiar with, Tom. We were talking about him earlier.
Eric 11 Hag.
That's a fair. Well, the thing is, the way things are going, he's probably going to be lucky he's going to be Eric 5 Hag if it continues the way things are going, because things are not looking very good for him, although this could be the stay of execution. I don't know how you feel about this, Dawn, but the thing is, it looked like he's definitely going to leave Manchester United, and then when you win the Cup, then you've got Ineos and you've got they're just looking at it thinking, you know, do we now sack him? Because maybe they were ready to sack him, expecting to lose the FA Cup final.
But, I mean, Coity, let's be honest here, right? They're saying, oh, my God, we've had the worst season ever, it's been dreadful, da-da-da.
Yeah,
when
relatively.
Did they finish in the league?
Yeah.
Exactly.
They were right.
I mean, for most teams, especially us West Ham fans out there, it's like you think, that's a bad season.
Yeah, but
hello.
we are talking Manchester United, and it is relative. So is Sir Jim Radcliffe going to be pulling the plug on, or pulling the rug, basically, from under Erik ten Hag?
If Erik ten Hag is so sort of loathed within Manchester United and people were trying to force him out anyway, wouldn't now be a nice, non-acrimonious moment for him to say, do you know what? We've achieved a wonderful thing. I can bow out in glory and walk off into the sunset.
Because that's when money is concerned. So do you mean if he walked away?
Yeah.
Because there's no need, because no manager is ever going to walk away from their job, because they will always be paid off the rest of their contract. So you could be the worst manager in the world, and we've seen a few, and then it's like, well, you're fired, but some clubs, they don't fire their manager because they know how much money it's going to cost to pay them off.
Wow.
So that's not going to happen.
Incredibly dysfunctional.
It's welcome to football. Welcome to football, the most dysfunctional thing that's going on anywhere. You thought politics was bad, my friend.
Well, OK, here's a link. The Prime Minister has a favourite football team.
Yes.
And it's Southampton.
Yes.
And they've been doing rather well.
Yes, they have done very well.
This analysis.
I know. But you're right. Southampton, they've now qualified to go back up to the Premier League. So it was the playoff, it was the Championship playoff game yesterday. So Southampton versus Leeds United. They finished just below. You've got Ipswich, and then you've got Leicester, who have already qualified to go into the Premier League because they were first and second. And then the four below that, this semi-final, and then there's a final. Now, they were the best two, basically, Southampton and Leeds. Leeds finished 3 points above Southampton, so it's been very close, but then Southampton managed to beat them yesterday. So that now means... how are we doing? Southampton are now in the Premier League, so he's going to be extremely happy.
And it is one of the best-paid games
they call it the richest. They call it the richest game in football, but nobody seems to put the right number on it because it's called the 100 million game. Then somewhere else it'd be the 150 million pound game. Then it might be the two. You had 140. I saw 170.
OK, so all the billion-pound game stuff, that's just hyperbolic.
Yes, I think so. Billion is probably going a little bit too far, but it is worth a lot of money. But the most important thing is the fact they're in the Premier League. It's not so much about the money, although everything seems to be about the prestige, and it's actually playing in the Premier League.
But will they stay up, Coity?
Will Southampton stay up? It's really tricky because this is the point where they've got to spend some of that money because they had a lot of players leave. So I think it was like 9, 10, 11. So now they've got to buy new players and see how it goes from there and in because we just don't know. It's very early days to be able to tell.
And I'd love it. Politics, you can't escape from politics. I'm so sorry, I know it's a bank holiday. You can't escape from it. But Southampton were getting abused because Rishi Sunak supports them.
And he went to one of the games recently.
Yes.
He goes to a lot of the games.
Yeah.
Because if you're a fan, you're a fan.
Yeah.
So therefore,
He took his mum and dad.
Yeah, bless them.
Is it possible then that there would be fans just because of that? That therefore, oh my goodness, now I can't support them because
Carry
of.
on screen, look.
Oh.
Blending in seamlessly.
Yes.
See, he comes across as someone who doesn't really like football or care about it. But then actually watching him watch this game, it did look like he's actually a fan, despite sort of how he comes across mostly on TV.
Tony Blair, Newcastle, it's all those things. It's so many politicians that will use football and say, oh, well, I remember when this happened or when this happened. And you say, well, do you really, or were you given that to make you look more of a man of the people because I support football teams? And how much do you really?
Cameron, do you support West Ham, or what was it, the other one he confused it for?
Aston Villa. He did once infamously
Yeah.
ask me, he got a crib sheet, I know we've got to go, he did a crib sheet on, when I was an editor, did a crib sheet on what team I support, but unfortunately got the wrong claret and blue.
You are. Yeah, OK.
True story.
Oh, no.
True story.
And there's only three, isn't
Best not to pretend with these things, isn't it? Boris Johnson never pretended to have a football team,
No.
really, and people
you're
sort of
talking
thought
about
he was
children.
more authentic for it. Well, there we go. Yes, I think we should probably move.
Oh, is that it? It's run its course.
Yeah,
OK.
that's all of the
I'll be back tomorrow morning.
We've completed all of the sports. Marvellous. Paul Coy, thank you as ever.
Pleasure.
Well, up next, we're going to be getting stuck into Rishi Sunak's plan for national service. Yes, even the royal family won't be exempt. That's the news today. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Have government done enough, do you think, to actually help them out?
I think there will be occasions where people have tried to run a venture, whether it be a pub, a restaurant or anything sort of like that, in the hospitality sector, and it hasn't become commercially viable because of costs, because of bad accounting or because of bad business people. That is just a fact of life. That happens in every sector. So there will be pubs that are closing because they've been poorly run. But I do think there will be occasions where people are forced out of the market. So if local councils aren't being able to pass on business rates, for example, maybe central government can do more. It always tries to do more to cut beer duty and things like that to keep pubs going. So I don't think it's necessarily just as plain as what James is saying, is that, you know, bad pubs will just inevitably be falling by the wayside.
The idea that you two gentlemen, you raging capitalists, support the government stepping in to protect pubs seems to me to be particularly peculiar. If a pub isn't commercially viable, it has to be allowed to fail.
Well, Sadiq Khan, you know, he has a nighttime czar that he pays well over 100 grand.
Yes.
And businesses are going under like you wouldn't believe in London.
She's a real nightmare.
What's your point?
Well, the point is that Labour aren't exactly helping out these businesses, are they? So
I'm saying that pubs should not be protected by the state. I'm all for a pub.
Well, I'm not suggesting that we subsidise pubs.
Well, that has been suggested. That's what James May is railing against. Although I have to say, it's all very well for James May and presumably his very posh gastropub. But if a pub is not fit for purpose, and May makes this point, you know, you've got to have decent, clean loos and a clean pub. And also, realistically, in this day and age, you know, times change, you've got to put on some decent grub as well if you want it to survive. We can't have the government stepping in to save our pubs. And anyway, my understanding over the last 10, 20 years, as a percentage, we haven't lost that many pubs, so they're not going under anytime soon.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very good morning to you. It is 9:45 and you're with Britain's Newsroom with me, Tom Harwood.
And me, Dawn Neeson.
Now, young members of the royal family, including Prince George, Prince Louis and Princess Charlotte, will have to spend a year in the military or volunteer in community under Rishi Sunak's new plans.
I wonder. That's as the Prime Minister is fighting back after announcing his first policy pledge, which would see national service brought back for 18-year-olds.
Well, yesterday, the Home Secretary, James Cleverly, told GB News that no one will be forced into military service.
The military bit of this will be limited to about 30,000 people. That bit will be voluntary. So the scheme overall will be compulsory, but the military bit will only be for people who volunteer to do that element of it.
And everyone else will have the treat of working in a care home or picking up litter or doing things that we tell criminals to do when we give them
Exactly.
community
It's
service.
compulsory volunteering. And am I interpreting that right?
That sounds like an oxymoron to me.
Slightly, yes.
Here's a question. Should the royal family be exempt from picking up litter in your local park or doing that sort of national service? Well, joining us in the studio is political commentator Matthew Stadlen and former advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley. Well, Matthew, your thoughts, first of all. It's an eye-catching policy.
It's certainly an eye-catching policy, although, as Michael Portillo has been suggesting, this might please Labour because it's going to distract journalists from scrutinising Labour's policies. I mean, this is almost a snap election, even though we've had nearly 5 years of this particular version of the Tory government. And so you might think that Labour are caught on the hop. So it's an opportunity to scrutinise Labour, which is what we want in a democracy. But instead, we're talking about nonsense policies like this. Let me address the royal family question first. If it is going to go ahead, and it's not going to go ahead, A, because the Tories are going to lose this election, in my view, it's not impossible that something crazy will happen, and B, even if they win, I don't think it would actually work in practice. But if it were to, then of course the royal family should participate as well. We should all be equal under the law. Let me quickly address this policy. It feels to me like this is policy drawn up on the back of an envelope. A panicking Conservative Party, panicking about losing votes for reform, saying, let's force young people to work for free. So you've just become an adult, you've just gained your rights as an adult, but you're not really an adult in the way the rest of us are, because we're going to force you, as Dawn was saying, to volunteer. And what it says to me is that after 14 years of Conservative rule, the Tories have failed communities, they've failed young people, they've failed public services. And in the case of the military bit, which, as you've been saying, is voluntary and is for 30,000 people, it suggests to me that they failed the armed services. Because if you look at the army, numbers have come crashing down since 2010.
Let's put that point to Charlie Rowley, because I suppose on the one hand, this is a pretty last-minute announcement. On the other hand, there are lots of countries, particularly in Europe, that do have national service.
Yes, that's right. And I think it is an eye-catching policy, and it's something that I think will be welcomed and talked about up and down the country. And that's the whole point, I think, in such a short space of time, or an election that we're having in such a short space of time. I think it's right for the Tories to get on the front foot, to be talked about. That is the only way, I think, that they're going to get cut through. And I think you'll see a number of eye-catching announcements probably every other day, if not every day, between now and the 4th of July.
But we are actually talking about a policy here, whereas we're not talking about Labour's policies, because no one is entirely sure what they are. And last year, I think it was, the Tories did have this Onward. It was a right-wing think tank that came up with this idea. And in a survey, 3 times as many people as not agreed with it being a good thing. So we're all doing this knee-jerk reaction on the front page of the paper saying, oh, my God, this is terrible, how can they do that? But a lot of youngsters do appear to support it, or certainly did in that survey.
They do, and, in an election when every vote counts, it certainly will appeal to perhaps a particularly older generation, an older voter who, if you're tempted or flirting with the idea of voting for any other party, it might sort of...
Why do we think that it might tempt older voters, Charlie? It's because they're not going to be doing the community service. They're not going to be forced to contribute to their communities. Instead, it's 18-year-olds who've been let down, by government after government after government. Think of how easy, relatively speaking, the baby boomers have had it. 18-year-olds, what chance, and you'll agree with this, I'm sure, Tom, what chance an 18-year-old have getting on the housing ladder? But young people have been let down repeatedly, and instead we're saying to them, OK, you've just got your freedom, as it were, as an adult, and every month for a weekend you're going to be forced to work for free. It's madness.
Some people might say that actually the community service and the national service that young people did was between 2020 and 2020 2022 when they spent about 365 days staying indoors to protect older people. That would probably be seen as a bit of national service from the young. Why do they need to do even more?
Well, I think it's it's an important point because actually COVID did disrupt the lives of everybody, particularly young people. You're absolutely right. But I think when you've had that disruption, there is then a disconnect sometimes between an individual and the society and community. And it goes back to David Cameron's sort of big society. But we're seeing far too often now, yes, young people, I think, whether it's through social media, whether it's through fake news, whether it's through anything else, where kids today, I think, are not as engaged in their communities, not engaged in society, jumping on the bandwagon of every campaign or whim going. And I think it's important that young people today do have that sense of pride in their community, that have made a contribution, that can actually then have an opportunity to go on to work, to develop skills, make friends, through the normal way of actually talking to people, engaging society, not through not through an iPhone or not through or technology or AI or anything else. I think it's just important to restore those sense of pride and values that people have, which the older generation actually do have, I think, compared to young people today. And it's just restoring that balance.
Not convinced by that, Charlie, but this, to me, seems to be an admission that school is not working in this country. Because if you reach adulthood and you're not invested in your local community, if, as one minister has been suggesting, you don't mix with other religions, what on earth has been going on in our education system? If communities are in need of investment, why are we forcing young people to invest in them for free rather than sorting out infrastructure, sorting out our public services?
Isn't the problem here that 93% of people in this country, school-age people, go to schools based on where they live, rather than based on attainment? And that means that if you live in an area with very high house prices and nice middle-class areas, you're going to mix with those people that you grew up with. And if you live in poorer areas, you're going to mix with people that
sort of
live
postcode
near
lottery
you too.
is what
Totally
you're
a
talking
postcode lottery. Whereas back when we had grammar schools, you had more mixing between different social classes.
This is an important but a whole nother conversation. But if you're right, and I think there's some truth in what you say, I don't see how this idea of forced volunteering is going to change that. Are 18-year-olds going to be asked to travel to different parts of the country, or are they going to have to identify poorer or wealthier parts of their own hometown in order to go and get experience elsewhere? I don't see how it works in practice. The government has said yesterday, James Cleverly, Home Secretary, we're not going to criminalise people for this. So what are you going to do? You're going to financially punish people? You're going to create a whole bunch of young adults who are not obeying the law? How is this going to work in practice? And on the military thing, and this is really important, the military thing, if this is an admission that we don't have nearly enough people in our armed forces, well, first of all, that's a failure of this Conservative government. But also, if we don't have enough people in our armed forces, who are going to train these 30,000 people, assuming there are 30,000 people who actually want to sign up? And where are they going to be housed?
The Prime Minister has said that he's going to raise defence spending to 2.5% of GDP. I suppose that could fund some of this, that enormous uplift. I think £75 billion more into the armed forces.
Not overnight, I don't think.
But the Labour Party isn't promising more money for the armed forces.
So they haven't committed to it, have they? And I would encourage Keir Starmer to make sure that the numbers, or at least some of the numbers that we have lost, and it's tens of thousands since 2010, are replaced. Remember what the Conservatives did to police, the devastating effect that had on community policing.
Well, they've started to build back 20,000 more police officers under Boris Johnson, so I'm not quite sure.
They cut 20,000, then they started to bring them back, but our population has grown in the meantime. Challenges are different.
Well, quite right. Yes, they are, which is why, the idea of national service, where the challenges are different and where actually there is that breakdown in community cohesion, you need a national service scheme, which I think is largely celebrated.
Bottom line, we have 3 million under-25s who are economically inactive, which is bad for all of us.
So get that work experience. Do something for a year in the community to help you get on the ladder.
Charlie, Matthew, thank you very much for joining us. Next, we're going to be in Gloucestershire for the annual cheese rolling race. You don't want to miss it. Here's the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Looking ahead to today, it's remaining pretty mixed out there. Further showers for most of us, but in between we will see some sunshine. And actually, across central and eastern parts of England, a bright start here this morning, but elsewhere showers developing and they will quickly migrate their way eastwards as we go through the course of the day. Main focus of the showers come the afternoon will be across eastern and northeastern Scotland. Here, risk of some heavy and thundery showers developing. A warning is in force from the Met Office throughout the day. And actually for all of us, it's going to be a bit of a chillier day compared to the weekend, with highs at best reaching around 17 or 18 degrees. So a bit more detail for this evening. The showers continuing across parts of eastern Scotland. Again, some of these will be heavy and thundery. Across southern Scotland and Northern Ireland, showers a little bit lighter here, but still the risk of 1 or 2 heavier showers can't be ruled out. For England and Wales, the showers gradually easing, but they will be quickly replaced down towards Devon and Cornwall by a more persistent band of rain. And in fact, this band of rain will start to spread its way a little bit further eastwards as we go through the course of the night. At the same time, showers across Scotland will gradually ease, and for many eastern parts, actually, the end of the night turns largely dry and clear. So could just see temperatures dip into single figures here, further west, holding up into double figures. So potentially a bright start across the east on Tuesday, but it won't last. The band of rain across the west will spread its way eastwards across many parts of the UK. Some heavy rain again across parts of southern Scotland and Northern Ireland, but it will turn brighter but showery come the afternoon for Northern Ireland. And for all of us, I think temperatures at best generally only climbing up to around average, but factor in the breeze and rain, it will feel a little bit cooler than that.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Morning, I'm Andy Hilbert with the latest on the roads across the UK. In Derbyshire, the southbound M1 moving a lot better now following the earlier emergency repairs from junction 25 for Nottingham and Derby to junction 24 for Nottingham South and East Midlands Airport. Currently in Kent, the anti-clockwise M25 queuing due to an earlier accident at junction 1A for the Dartford Tunnel, and also in the West Midlands, the southbound M5. There's a lane closed on the exit slip road due to emergency repairs at junction 3 for Birmingham. In Cheshire, the northbound M6, one lane closed due to a vehicle having its tyre changed. Junction 18 for Middlewich and Holmes Chapel to junction 19 at Knutsford. And in Cheshire, the southbound M6, one lane closed, it's a broken down vehicle. Junction 19 at Knutsford to junction 18 for Middlewich and Holmes Chapel. And also 2 in London, in Great Whalley, London bound, the A127, the entry slip road blocked due to an overturned car near to the M25 at junction 29. You're up to date.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News. The
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock on Monday, the 27th of May. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Tom Harwood, and Dawn Neeson.
Dawn Neeson, indeed. And you don't need the time. It's a bank holiday Monday. Enjoy. Right, trust and security. That's what Labour will pledge this morning as Sir Keir Starmer gives his first keynote speech of the election. We're expecting that at any moment now.
How exciting.
I know.
And the royals to face national service. Under Rishi Sunak's new plans, Prince George, Louis and Princess Charlotte will all have to spend a year in the military or volunteer in the community.
Could be painting a wall near you soon. And a Lib Dem landslide. Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey says his party is getting the best response from voters it has received for a generation.
Wow, huge. Child exploitation. A shocking new study shows that more than 300 million children a year are victims of online sexual exploitation and abuse. More on that later.
And bank holiday travel. Yes, it is a bank holiday and there is travel problem. Have you been held up on the road, rail or airports this weekend? Let us know.
Now, of course, throughout the show, we want your thoughts. Get involved. Send us your thoughts and messages about what you think.
On anything we're talking about, even on what you want to talk about yourselves. gbnews.com/your say. Very easy.
Even on our colour-coordinated outfits.
Very nearly.
Definitely.
Trying to blend into the screen.
Beforehand. But yes, before all of that, let's get your latest news headlines with Tamsin Roberts.
Tom, thanks very much and good morning from the GB Newsroom. It's just after 10 o'clock. In his first keynote speech of the general election campaign, Sir Keir Starmer is to say economic, border and national security will form the bedrock of the Labour Party's manifesto. His speech comes as Labour and the Conservatives clash over who will best protect the country. It follows Rishi Sunak's announcement of plans to introduce compulsory national service. The Prime Minister has also committed to raise defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2030. Foreign Office Minister Anne-Marie Trevelyan says the Tories want to make sure Britain is secure.
The rest of the world is in a really rough place at the moment. And we've got to make sure, and that's the work that we do through NATO, the incredible leadership that the UK shows, why it is that we believe these things are important to stand up for. So I'm very surprised by anyone who thinks that those values, defending those values, ensuring our young people are resilient as individuals and as part of a community is something that they would think isn't a good thing.
Police investigating the fatal stabbing of a woman on a Bournemouth beach have released CCTV images of a hooded suspect. A 34-year-old was pronounced dead on Durley Chine Beach on Friday night, whilst a 38-year-old woman was hospitalised with serious injuries. Both women are from Poole. A 17-year-old boy was arrested on suspicion of murder and remains in custody. Dorset police are urging anyone who recognises the person in the CCTV picture to get in touch urgently. More than 300 million children a year are victims of online sexual exploitation and abuse. That's according to new research from the University of Edinburgh, which found 1 in 8 of the world's children have been victims of non-consensual sharing and exposure to sexual images and video in the past year. It also found 12.5% of children globally are estimated to have been subject in the past year to unwanted sexual talk and unwanted sexual acts requested by adults or other youths. Melanoma skin cancer cases in the UK are at an all-time high, with nearly 21,000 expected to be diagnosed this year. Cancer Research UK says rates of melanoma have increased by almost a third over a decade. It's understood there's been an upward trend in cases in all ages, but the biggest rise has occurred in adults over 80. Cancer Research says all skin types can get melanoma, but that around 17,000 cases every year are preventable.
Your skin tone does affect your risk of skin cancer. People at the most risk are people with lighter skin tones, so light-coloured hair and eyes as well, lots of moles and freckles, a history of sunburn or a family history of skin cancer. But people with darker skin tones can still burn and can still get skin cancer. Anybody can get skin cancer.
Israeli airstrikes on Rafah have killed at least 35 people, according to the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza. Israel says it wants to root out Hamas fighters holed up in Rafah and rescue hostages it says are being held in the area. OK, let's cross live now to West Sussex, where Sir Keir Starmer is making his first keynote speech of his campaign trail. Here we go.
Thank you all for that very warm welcome. Thank you, Tom. You'll be a fantastic candidate and an even better Member of Parliament. And thank you to all of you for coming here on a Monday, a bank holiday Monday, and it's 10 o'clock in the morning. But I suppose at least there's a bit of sun and we are by the seaside. And of course, we're in Sussex, which is a beautiful part of the world, a part I know pretty well. My sisters live in Sussex, and I've got an uncle who lived actually very close to here. And so it is a part of the world I know well. And like everyone, I imagine, my character is shaped by where I started in life. Now, I grew up in a small town, actually not a million miles from here. It's a place called Oxted, on the Surrey-Kent border. Similar to Lancing, I suppose, in some respects, although no sea. But you should go to Oxted on your way back if you get time, or when you get time. And if you do, what you will see is a place that, in my opinion, is about as English as it gets. A mix of Victorian red bricks and pebbled ash semis, while all around you've got rolling hills, pastures, and the beautiful chalk hills of the North Downs. I loved growing up there. You could make easy money clearing stones for the local farmers. That was actually my first ever job. You could play football until the cows came home, literally. My first football club was Bolthurst Athletic FC. I was very proud of this. We shared our home pitch with the local cows, which may say something about the way I play football. But not just the beauty or the football, also the sort of quiet, uncomplaining resilience, the togetherness of the countryside. That is the best of British. And to be honest, it's just as well, because you need it. I mean, anyone who thinks that hardship in Britain is found only in our cities, anyone who thinks there's no struggle outside of our cities, yes, even here in the southeast, let me tell you, they know nothing of the countryside. And in a way, my story is testament to this, because it wasn't easy for us. My dad was a toolmaker. He worked in a factory all of his life. My mum was a nurse, but for most of her life, she had a debilitating illness called Still's disease. To be honest, she would have hated being called debilitating, because she never gave up and she never complained. But her illness did shape our lives, whether that was many, many hours spent with her in high dependency units when I was a teenager, not quite knowing whether she'd pull through, or whether it was just her incredible resilience. Every time she was told she'd never be able to get up and walk again, she was single-minded in her determination. I've never seen sheer willpower like that. My mum to be told she wasn't going to walk was a challenge she was going to rise to over and over and over again. And that shaped me. And then there was the economy, because, of course, when I was growing up, this was the 1970s. And there were hard times. And I know what out-of-control inflation feels like. How the rising cost of living can make you scared of the postman coming down the path. Will he bring another bill we can't afford? And I'll tell you this, If you're working class, you're scared of debt. You're scared. My mum and dad were scared of debt. So they would choose the bill that they wouldn't pay rather than going to bed. And they chose the phone bill. They would have the phone cut off rather than pay the bill because it was the easiest one to do without. Obviously, no mobiles back then, but you could just about get by. Now, all of that, my background, has stayed with me. It shaped the plan that I've drawn up for Britain. The importance, above all, of economic stability. The need never to put working people through the whirlwind of chaos. The rising taxes, rising prices, rising mortgage costs. £5,000 for every working family. That is what the Tories have inflicted on Britain. The price working people have paid for their chaos, and it's unforgivable. But as I reflect and look forward to this election, I believe my background has also shaped my politics in a deeper way. Look, this England has always been fairly far removed from Westminster. Politics has always been something that happens far away. And yet something more profound has changed during the last 14 years of Tory government. People now feel more and more of the decisions that affect their community are taken by people who not only live miles away, but have little empathy for their challenges. A politics that is, at best, doing something to people, not with them. And at its worst, as we saw in horrifying detail in Westminster last week, those twin injustices, Horizon and infected blood scandals, is something much, much darker even than that. It's about respect, or to be precise, the lack of it. That is the canary in the mine of injustice. For a long time now, working people have believed opportunity in Britain is stacked against them. But now we're at a dangerous new point, close to crossing a Rubicon of trust, not just in politics, but in many of the institutions that are meant to serve and protect the British people. A moment where people no longer believe their values or interests carry the respect of those in power. And when you put that alongside a government that over 14 years has left living standards in this country worse than when they found them, that has torched any semblance of standards in public life, Westminster parties that broke the rules they put in place to save lives, and rules they expected you to follow, but ignored themselves, then you get a crisis in nothing less than who we are as a nation. The values that have held us together, that have driven us on through hard times towards our greatest achievements, taken to the edge by these Tories. And healing these wounds is what national renewal means. Politics has to be about service. Britain must be a country that respects your contribution. Everyone, not just those at the top, deserve the chance to get on. Now, these are the ideas that I'm fighting for. This is my project. A Britain once more in the service of working people, country first, party second. Now, I don't know if this is a new politics or whether it's simply a return to something older that used to be taken for granted. But public service is the bare minimum you should expect. And you also deserve the security, the certainty, the basic, ordinary hope that Britain will be better for your children. And I think that no matter what our struggles, we always had that back in the 1970s. My parents always believed that in the end, hard work would be rewarded and Britain would be better for their children. for me. Now, that may not sound like much to some people, but you can't underestimate how important it is for working class families like mine. How much it comforted my parents, particularly towards the end of their lives. It gave us a hope and a stability that we could build our lives around. And I believe it's what working people want now more than anything. They want to believe in the future. They want, when they say to their children, work hard and you can achieve anything, for that to feel true. But after 14 years of Tory damage to our values, the service and security they should expect as a given, they just don't believe it anymore. And that has consequence for all parties. Look, whatever the polls say, I know there are countless people who haven't decided how they'll vote in this election. They're fed up with the failure, the chaos, and the division of the Tories. But they still have questions about us. Has Labour changed enough? Do I trust them with my money, our borders, our security? My answer is yes, you can, because I've changed this party permanently. This has been my driving mission since day one. I was determined to change Labour so it could serve the British people, give them a government that matches the ambition that they have for their families and their communities. And the very foundation of any good government is economic security, border security, national security. And make no mistake, if the British people give us the opportunity to serve, then this is their core test. It's always their core test. The definition of service. Can you protect this country? And I haven't worked for 4 years on this just to stop now. This is the foundation, the bedrock that our manifesto, our first steps, will be built on. And then on that foundation, with an end to the Tory chaos, we can start to rebuild our country. Step one, economic stability, the very foundation of growth, with tough spending rules that mean we can keep inflation, taxes and mortgages low. Now, I don't know about you. I am fed up of listening to the Prime Minister tell you that we've turned the corner. Turn the corner. This is a form of disrespect in itself. Taxes higher than at any time since the war. Chaos hitting every working family to the tune of £5,000. And a Prime Minister prepared to do it all over again. Now, he says he wants to get rid of national insurance. That's £46 billion that is currently used on your pension and the NHS. And he's not prepared to say how he'll fund it. That means at this election, either your pension is under threat, or he's prepared to blow the economy up all over again. He hasn't learnt a thing. And working people need stability. They want things to improve. They want things to move on. They want change. But they expect you to take care of the public finances as well. Because if you lose control of the economy, it's working people who pay the price. Liz Truss lost control of the economy, and working people paid the price. A week after that mini-budget, I went to Wolverhampton, and I saw a couple. They had one child, a 3-year-old. They'd made the decision they wanted a second child. They'd found a new house that they could move into for their expanded family. They'd got a mortgage offer that they could afford. They were looking forward, the next step forward in their lives. Liz Truss crashed the economy. Their mortgage offer went through the roof. They had to pull out of the sale, stay where they were, cancel their house. But they also took a more profound decision. They decided that they could no longer afford to have a second child. Now, they will live with the consequences of that for the rest of their lives. That is the price that they paid. And I'm not prepared to let a Labour government ever inflict that pain on working people. Ever.
Well, there we have it. The leader of the Labour Party, and if you believe the polls, the next Prime Minister, talking a bit about his childhood, but also his values, growing up in the south of England, picking up stones as his first job, and playing football until the cows came home, literally.
And very much emphasising the messages he always does. He is about working people, working class people. He actually used the phrase working people 9 times in that speech. Now, we're working people.
Yeah.
Rishi Sunak is a working person. I'm not sure what he actually means by that, but he keeps using that phrase to hammer home the point that he is one of us. He understands what we're going through.
It's a bit like astrology, isn't it? Where you sort of try and say the most vague thing to fit anyone's star sign. You say working people, everyone thinks of themselves as a working person, unless you're the king.
I mean, Tom, I know Labour don't have to give us any policies because, you know, they're probably going to win in any case, so they can be vague about things. They don't. All they've got to say is the Tories are not doing very well. This is time immemorial of the elections. But there was a lot of rhetoric there, not a lot of detail about what's actually going to happen.
But do you know what's quite interesting here? Red and white. Red and white. He spoke about Englishness at the start of this speech. That's something you don't hear a lot from the Labour Party about. It's something that the Tories have really captured. But also, of course, England, the football team, will be playing the Euros quarter-final just the day after the election, if we get through to the quarter-final, that is. I think a sense of Englishness will be a huge, huge theme of this general election.
Depends how many votes he wants to get in Scotland.
That's true. That's very true. And, of course, the SNP are doing a big speech a bit later, which I'm afraid we're going to have to see a little bit of as well. Well, up next, we're going to come to some top analysis on what Keir Starmer is actually saying with this speech. And can Starmer keep Britain safe? You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
2,000 football banning orders have been issued to England fans ahead of this summer's Euro 2024 tournament in Germany. But authorities think that more than 300,000 England supporters could go to Germany, with Scotland fans, of course, also expected to travel in huge numbers. Well, I'm joined now by GB News' home and security editor, Mark White. Mark, welcome to the show. So you went to a press briefing this morning. As I understand, the authorities are gearing up to tackle what they see as a huge wave of potential hooliganism at the tournament. What's the latest?
Well, they're certainly not saying they're expecting hooliganism, and they are preparing for the worst, of course, if it happens, but hoping for the best. They say that in recent tournaments, England fans and, of course, Scotland fans have been pretty well behaved, but there will be very significant numbers attending that tournament, which gets underway in just over 5 weeks' time. That first match is Scotland taking on Germany in Munich, and of course just 2 days later it's England against Serbia near Dortmund. So 300,000 England fans alone they're expecting, because it's so accessible. I spoke earlier to Chief Constable Mark Roberts, who is the national lead for football policing. This is what he told me.
Positive, you know, England fans got a great record at recent tournaments. We know when any number of that people travel, there's always potential for issues, but I think the German authorities are really well prepared. And I think one of the positives, particularly thinking about our fans, Germany's a beer drinking culture, so the police are well aware of dealing with people in the nighttime economy. They deal with plenty of big festivals, so I think we're going to a place that is well suited to work with us to keep everyone safe and make sure there's no issues.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Well, good morning. It's Britain's Newsroom, and we're just going to dip back into Keir Starmer, where we're expecting him to talk about security.
But in a way, this desperation tells another story. Elections are about more than individual changes and policies, but about values, temperament, character, and a bigger question: whose side are you on? Who do you hold in your mind's eye when you're making decisions? Now, everything I have fought for has been shaped by my life. Every change I've made to this party has been about a cause. The answer to that question, the only answer, the working people of this country delivering on their aspirations, earning their respect, serving their interests. And I know that people are looking at this election, looking at me personally. So I make this promise. I will fight for you. I took this Labour Party 4.5 years ago, and I changed it into the party you see today. Now, I was criticised for some of the changes I made. Change is always like that. Always people who say, don't do it, you're going too fast. But wherever I saw a fork in the road, at the Crown Prosecution Service, in my work in Northern Ireland, and especially here in the Labour Party, it always comes back to this. The golden thread. Country first, party second, I will fight for you. Because you cannot restore trust and respect with the politics of protest. You cannot move our country forward with gimmicks and gestures. And you cannot truly serve the country if you only do what is convenient. That is why I changed the Labour Party. That is how we serve the British people. I see no fight in the Prime Minister, no appetite to do the same for his party. They will not change. Seriously, whenever he is confronted by factions in his party, people who are miles away from serving the values of the British people, he caves in every time. A party-first weakness at the heart of his leadership. Rwanda is the perfect example. He never believed in it. He knew it wouldn't work. He said that. He tried to stop it when he was Chancellor. But he was too weak to stand up to his party. He caved in. And now he's gone through, and it's cost £600 million. And now he's called an election before it can be tested. Weakness upon weakness. On Saturday, I was in Stafford, and I was with a couple. Actually, we went into their kitchen to have a cup of tea. One of them was a paramedic, and her wife worked in a jewellery shop. They've got 2 children. They bought their house, where we had our cup of tea, 5 years ago. And they've been on a fixed-rate mortgage ever since. And they could afford it. But then they've come off it, and they've searched for the best next deal. And the best next deal is hundreds of pounds a month more. Hundreds of pounds a month more. And they're struggling. How do you think they feel when the Prime Minister says, we've turned a corner? How do you think they feel when they see the people who did that to their mortgages swanning around in the House of Lords because Sunak was too weak to stand up to them? Service isn't just a word. It requires action. You have to roll up your sleeves and change things for the better. I have changed this Labour Party, dragged it back to service, and I will do exactly the same for Westminster. That is the choice at this election: service or self-interest, stability or chaos, a Labour Party that has changed or a Tory party that has run away from the mainstream. The choice is yours. You can stop the chaos, you can turn the page, you can join with us, and together we can rebuild our country. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, there we go. That was Sir Keir Starmer finishing his big speech. We're joined now by the former Labour advisor Matthew Larser and author and broadcaster Emma Wolfe in the studio. Matthew, as a former Labour advisor, what do you make of the optics and the content of what was just said?
Well, I think the first thing to say is it's very interesting where he was. He's down on the Sussex coast. The seat is part of Worthing. It's right down the list of seats that he needs to win. It's not a seat he has to win just to get into government. It's a seat Labour needs to win if it wants to have a big majority. So this shows Labour's confidence.
Near sort of 400 mark.
Yeah, it's certainly right the way down there. And he was in Stafford on Saturday, as he's saying in the speech. Again, that's right the way down. We're talking about places with Tory majorities over 10,000. So this shows their confidence, whereas Labour's done an analysis today with the FT, which shows that Sunak's been going to a lot more defensive seats. So obviously they feel they're very much on the front foot. And very interestingly, you said earlier that you're sort of summarising that he was talking about growing up in the south of England. It's not normally the story we hear from Labour leaders about growing up on the Sussex-Surrey borders. And I think
the previous Labour leader went to a very posh part of
no, he did, but he didn't talk. Yes, but he didn't talk about it. He didn't make it part of that. That's the thing. You know, he didn't make it part of his pitch. And what he's doing there is he's trying to make out that he is the voice of Middle England. And one of the things that he's been very frustrated about, his people say, is that because he became leader in the pandemic, I remember watching him literally the sort of day before lockdown being announced as leader. People haven't got to know who he is. So you know, we may have all heard the story about his dad being a tool maker before, but actually that's never really cut through with the public because they didn't get the usual, time to meet him because they had rather bigger things on their mind than meeting the new Labour leader in the spring of 2020.
And Emma, it seems like he's just trying to run away from his knighthood. I suppose a lot of people hear the words Sir Keir Starmer and think he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, but I suppose he's really trying to emphasise that that's not the case.
It really is, yeah. I mean, look, I find Starmer wooden and uninspiring. He's not going to set the world on fire as a speaker, is he? You know, you feel kind of slightly sleepy when he starts talking and then he goes on and on and on. Today was meant to be a sort of this announcement of their security sprint, this 100-day review of Homeland Security, and I just wonder whether really he's talking about working people. He kept on emphasising country first, party second. Really, as Dawn said, how many times did he mention working people, hard-working people, all of that? How many times his background was working class? But actually, I'm not sure this kind of thing is going to resonate with working people. He can reference as many people that he's met on the campaign trail as he wants, but people are worried about more things closer to home than hostile states, generative artificial intelligence, weird stuff like that. I mean, the basic job of a government is to deal with Homeland Security. But I think his speeches need to judge themselves up a bit.
Isn't it interesting that both party leaders of the main parties, the two people who could possibly be Prime Minister, are both talking about national security? Each one thinks they've got the edge here.
Well, I think that the Tories wanted to fight this campaign on national security. And every piece of polling says that Labour is ahead on national security. So we saw over the weekend quite a lot of Tory commentators, the Tory columnists in the papers, saying, why on earth is he trying to fight an election on territory which actually the public trust his opponent more on? I think this plays into the narrative that the wheels are coming off the Tory campaign.
But
I mean, you were discussing
earlier. It's not a doorstep issue. People do not... I was talking to a Labour MP yesterday who said he's never once, in years of knocking on doors, never once had someone say to him, I'm really worried about the threat of Russia and Iran. That's not what people are talking about, and it's weird that they're focusing on...
Yeah, it feeds into a wider narrative.
Yes, that they are capable, that he's ready for power.
That didn't really hurt Jeremy Corbyn, perhaps because no one thought he could become Prime Minister. But by 2019, Jeremy Corbyn's stance on Russia, particularly after the Novichok poisoning, where he was like, let's get Russia to check whether it was poison or not. I mean, really?
No, obviously the threat is there, but A, this is a prerequisite. You would expect any government to deal with Homeland Security. And secondly, I think it's more about positioning Starmer for himself, positioning him as someone that we see as a Prime Minister. He's trying to get that authority.
It's interesting that we mentioned Corbyn, because voters now, according to the latest poll, dislike the Tories even more than they did Corbyn in 2019. Matthew, I know Labour don't have to come up with any policies. They don't have to say anything. All they've got to do is the Tories are doing a bad job, we'll do better. I noticed while there wasn't really many personal attacks on Rishi Sunak...
No, he's trying to be sort of...
Liz Truss came in for a bit of a kicking.
She does even in Tory speech.
Well, she does, no, absolutely. But is it time now that Labour actually started to give us a bit more detail about what they're actually going to do, rather than saying, we are for you, we are for the working people, I'm working class, this is, this is what I am, but not what I'm going to do?
It's a very delicate matter. I mean, there was a policy in there somewhere, which is this 100 days a security audit, where they're going to bring together the MI5 police civil service to look at where we've got gaps.
But everyone should do that, but any government coming in should review the threats.
Well,
and be
Emma, the Tories haven't. There were clear gaps there, which is what...
What's the big plan from Labour?
No,
security audit.
Well, hang on,
is there anything more Keir Starmer that you can possibly imagine?
Let's just remind ourselves, as you were discussing earlier, the Tories have had 3 days with the most disastrous policy ever launched by a major political party, worse even than the so-called death tax from Theresa May, which is the ludicrous national service proposal.
Oh, it doesn't poll as bad as the so-called death tax.
Actually,
it polls 60% against.
Lots of young people are getting all overexcited about it. It's actually quite popular with a lot of people, the idea of giving young people a structure after they leave school, giving them a structure, getting them back integrated into society. We have a crisis amongst young people.
Emma, the only people it's popular with are over 65s who are already going to vote Tory. It's a desperate attempt to shore up, most of whom, of course, didn't do national service themselves, and we're so thankful that they didn't do national service at the time.
What's
that they
the
just
big deal about suggesting that people might actually volunteer, that they might help out in their communities?
We're
not sending them off as cannon fodder. We're not sending 18-year-olds off to die on the front line.
The Tories already had a policy of community service option for kids. They took 2.2 billion out of it a year ago, so they literally stopped their own policy a year ago. And then Andrew Murison, the Armed Forces Minister, rejected the very idea of 16 and 17-year-olds going into the army because it was a distraction from what the army needs.
To be fair...
No senior army person wants a whole bunch of people who don't want to be there forced into the army.
That is completely true, which is why the policy proposal says that 5% of 18-year-olds would have the option, this 30,000 places in the army. Are you saying that not even 5% of 18-year-olds want to be in the army?
Well, 5% of 18-year-olds, Tom, don't go and join the armed forces at the moment. So the answer is no.
You just haven't had the little push necessary.
Well, we need to have better recruitment, and we need to give our armed forces what they need. We need to have that's part of the security review. We need to give our armed forces the resources that they need, which the Tories have let down because
that's an interesting point, though, because it is a dividing line. Keir Starmer has not committed to.
No, he has committed to it. You're wrong there, Tom. He's committed to it as soon as money allows. It's unfunded by the Tories.
It's not.
The Tories need to say what they're going to cut, Tom.
The Tories say they're going to cut 70,000 civil service jobs to pay for it.
Tom, the Tories have said they're going to cut 70,000 civil service jobs at every election since 2010, and the number of civil servants after 14 years of Tories has gone up, not down. It's baloney, and the public can see through it, which is why the Tories are doing so badly.
Matthew, when Rachel Reeves was grilled yesterday morning about actual policies and actual funding, she said pretty much everything was sort of up for grabs. She said, we'll see once we get into government. She wasn't able to give any detail on their actual economic policy, was she?
What she can do is she's given very specific pledges on things like 2 million extra GP appointments, transforming NHS dentistry.
She doesn't give the
No, they
detail.
do, because they're cut from things like extending the actually sorting out the non-dom situation with the choice of fudge.
The non-dom money again.
You might not like it, and you might not like it about putting VAT on the schools that only 7% of people in the country go to.
The non-dom magic money tree, which we have now spent.
No, because, for example, it's been very clear on putting VAT on private school fees, which is not uncontroversial, but it's there because it wants to give 93% of kids better schools, and the 7% of kids will have to
extremely unpopular policy and very unfair on children.
It's one of the Labour's most popular policies.
And yet all of the money it raises might have to then fund the spaces in the state sector so that many children
if you
will
think
have to go back.
No, because what it means is, as Bridget Phillipson, the education spokeswoman, said this morning, what? Oh no, private schools may have to tighten their belts a little bit. Well, you go into a state school which had to tighten their belts for 5 years during austerity and took 20 and 30% of their resources when I think private schools will be able to soak up.
It's not about private schools tightening their belts. It's about children being chucked out of their private schools because their parents, many of whom
the schools need to make cuts to be able to do it.
Many private school parents are scrimping and saving because they prioritise their children's education above things like foreign holidays, new cars, whatever. Those children will have to move schools. I hope you're happy about that.
Well, we'll be back with you too.
Very passionate debate going on here. Matthew Larser, Emma Wolf, thank you very much there.
Well, as we were saying...
Yes, indeed. Your country needs you. In one of the first major policy announcements of the election, Rishi Sunak has vowed to bring back national service.
Well, the Defence Secretary, Grant Shapps, says it will toughen up Britain's youth, as well as boosting the country's resilience.
Meanwhile, Admiral Lord West, a former chief of the Naval Staff, said the plan is bonkers and we need to spend more on defence. And by doing what Rishi Sunak is suggesting, money will be sucked out of defence.
Well, joining us now is the defence editor of the Evening Standard, Robert Fox. And Robert, let's just get your view on the policy proposal to start with. Is it practical?
You're not going to shout at me like the previous discussion, are you? I'm only a weedy defence editor, seen a lot of wars. No, as presented, to answer your question, Tom, very fair. It looks wildly impractical, and it looks as if it didn't even fill up half the proverbial fag packet or back of an envelope. There is something behind this, however, but it cannot be rolled out in the way that they described it. Murison was right. When I raised this, when the Swedish Defence Minister visited, when Ben Wallace was Defence Secretary, I said, would you consider some kind of national voluntary service, a sort of scholarship scheme, a GI Bill type thing that you get in the United States? That the Swedish minister explained how it was going to be very difficult for Britain. Wallace said he might consider it. There was a real slapdown to Fox public statement for the MOD that afternoon, and I'm only talking about months ago, saying, oh, no, we can't possibly consider this. So that this has been cobbled up in very short order. But the requirement for public involvement, as one of your panellists said, in national security, which isn't just defence, is absolutely glaring. And that's what they're getting at. But it's not a vote winner.
Robert, in the Conservative Party's defence here, last year they discussed this, the Onward, the centre-right think tank. They came up with the Great British National Service. So the fag packet has been being scribbled on for over a year at least. And an independent poll found then that 3 times as many young people aged 16 to 21 supported national service rather than opposing it. So, I mean, maybe we are being a bit unfair. Maybe the devil is in the detail, and a lot of the details haven't been thought out. But maybe it could be, in a world where it is more dangerous, it could be a good thing.
Well, my middle name, of course, is unfair, because I happen to know, sorry, I don't want to be, is that defence chiefs have gone to Finland, to Norway, and talked to the Scandinavian allies, who are absolutely critical to the UK through this, or the Joint Expeditionary Force. Sorry, it's real, it's where Britain counts, and it's vital to the defence of our shores and our skies and our cyberspace, that they have looked at it, but they're trying to work a scheme, Dawn, you've got it absolutely right, of involving young people. The thing that is so worrying at the moment is that as the population gets older, fewer people proportionally are coming into the workforce. least of all into public service. That's the one that has to be cracked. And by the way, the administration of the armed forces has a hell of a lot to answer for, because the restrictions, the conformity principles, and so on for recruits coming forward have been so complex and ridiculous. We've heard about the girl that had an allergy. I know a young man who was going to the Welsh Guards. He was delayed from his officer training by months and months and months because he'd had athlete foot when he was at school and playing sport. It's that kind of ridiculous thing. COVID, by the way, has flagged this up, is the need for public service of all kinds at different levels, voluntary service, sponsored service, part-time service, which the Scandinavians are so good at. Yes, that should be considered. But in fact, it's so multi-layered, I think it's going to be very difficult, to take Tom's point, to present in as a palatable election programme.
Robert, you mentioned the Scandinavian countries, and of course Norway, Sweden, they do have national service, but so does Austria and Greece and Estonia and Lithuania. France introduced it in 2021. It was one of Macron's campaign pledges. It does seem like a number of countries are moving towards this in a more dangerous world.
I think I want you to say, Tom, Ginger, You're Balmy, which was a brilliant novel by Lodge about national service, and I commend to anybody Arnold Wesker's Chips with Everything. It's now a classic play. Those two show how bad, how malign an influence national service between 1946 and 1963 in this country. And that's what the defence chiefs say. Let's not do it like that way. And they hate the idea of compulsion. They do not want reluctant recruits. But how you bring people into public service, I think it's short-term contracts. I think bringing people into various deals, you give us a year or even 8 months and you can go up to 3 years and we'll pay you, and we'll pay at least part, if not all, of your first degree or first level tertiary education. By that I mean university and college. It's that kind of imagination that is required. And I'm sorry to say there are elements in the civil service which are very reluctant to look at it that way. The civil service, the Treasury particularly, as I've known over years with defence, has hated personnel. Whenever there have been defence cuts, the easy one has been to cut what we were allowed to call in those days manpower, but we have to call it personnel power now. And as you have both said, the services are depleted. And curiously, as on so much in public security and defence, Ukraine, for instance, initially from 2022, the public is ahead of the population. Of the politicians here. Dawn is right with the opinion polls. They sense, Houston, we have a problem here. And how are we going to fix it? They don't particularly like what is being offered.
Well, Robert Fox of the Evening Standard, thank you very much for joining us and talking through what is a big, big talking point in this general election.
Very much. It's on the front page of every single newspaper. There's no escape. But up next, bank holiday travel hell. Have you been caught up in the traffic over the long weekend? We'll tell you the traffic hotspots to avoid. Just stay and watch telly, basically. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Looking ahead to today, it's remaining pretty mixed out there. Further showers for most of us, but in between, we will see some sunshine. And actually, across central and eastern parts of England, a bright start here this morning, but elsewhere showers developing and they will quickly migrate their way eastwards as we go through the course of the day. Main focus of the showers come the afternoon will be across eastern and northeastern Scotland. Here, risk of some heavy and thundery showers developing. A warning is in force from the Met Office throughout the day. And actually for all of us, it's going to be a bit of a chillier day compared to the weekend, with highs at best reaching around 17 or 18 degrees. So a bit more detail for this evening. The showers continuing across parts of eastern Scotland. Again, some of these will be heavy and thundery. Across southern Scotland and Northern Ireland, showers a little bit lighter here, but still the risk of 1 or 2 heavier showers can't be ruled out. For England and Wales, the showers gradually easing, but they will be quickly replaced down towards Devon and Cornwall by a more persistent band of rain. And in fact, this band of rain will start to spread its way a little bit further eastwards as we go through the course of the night. At the same time, showers across Scotland will gradually ease, and for many eastern parts, actually, the end of the night turns largely dry and clear. So could just see temperatures dip into single figures here, further west, holding up into double figures. So potentially a bright start across the east on Tuesday, but it won't last. The band of rain across the west will spread its way eastwards across many parts of the UK. Some heavy rain again across parts of southern Scotland and Northern Ireland, but it will turn brighter but showery come the afternoon for Northern Ireland. And for all of us, I think temperatures at best generally only climbing up to around average, but factor in the breeze and rain, it will feel a little bit cooler than that.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives. Again, down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, you're watching Britain's Newsroom. Now, it's been a chaotic bank holiday weekend for travellers so far. Rail passengers and drivers heading for the ferries at Dover have been particularly badly hit.
Well, Simon Colgar, a travel correspondent on The Independent and supremo with all of these things, has been keeping his eyes on the transport landscape for us, and normally from some hellhole where you don't want to be. Hello, Simon, how are you? Are you stuck in traffic somewhere or waiting in an airport somewhere? You normally are.
Dawn, no, I'm actually in the relatively civilised and well-functioning King's Cross Station, the London hub for the East Coast Main Line. Having said that, I am seeing on LNER, the train operator from here to Yorkshire, to North East England and to Scotland, about a dozen cancellations and curtailments today. That's due to staff shortage. Bluntly, not enough train crews, and that's being repeated elsewhere across the nation. But actually, it's probably better on the East Coast Main Line, trying to get from here to Scotland, than it is on the West Coast Main Line, where you've got all manner of problems, engineering works mostly, and there are rail replacement buses running, which seem to be a natural counterpart to any bank holiday in the UK.
Simon, the rail replacement buses, are there actually any roads that are capable of carrying them, given we have non-stop traffic jams on bank holidays?
Very good point. Yes, actually, let me tell you where the hotspots are, and they're mostly away from the rail replacement bus areas. So we are going to see later on today the usual suspects, really. So that's coming up from Cornwall and Devon on the M5, particularly going through Somerset on the way up to Bristol. That's going to be busy. Routes coming out of the Lake District later on today onto the M6, and similarly, just a little bit further south from there, the M55 from Blackpool. Heading towards the M6, the M61. Then on our old friend, the M25, the London Orbital Motorway. Well, that's going to be pretty grim, particularly on the western bit between the M1 junction and going round via the M40, the M4 at Heathrow, right round to the M23 at Gatwick. That's all going to be very busy. So the advice is, if you're setting off in your car now, please don't stay and watch GB News. You'd be much better off and set up at 7 o'clock this evening.
Oh, marvellous. And I think I can hear from the background of where you are, things seem to be running smoothly at King's Cross Station. You can hear that from the announcements anyway. But something that was rather less smooth was this flight from Doha to Dublin over the weekend, with 8 passengers taken to hospital.
Well, yes. The latest I've got, actually, Tom, is that it was half a dozen passengers, half a dozen members of crew. Yeah, this was Qatar Airways Flight 17 from Doha to Dublin yesterday. Took off normally. It was flying over kind of north-central Turkey when it encountered severe turbulence. And as a result of that, well, there were medical teams waiting at Dublin Airport. However, it's not the same order of magnitude as last week's tragedy involving Singapore Airlines on a flight from London Heathrow to Singapore. In that case, 73-year-old Jeff Kitchen very sadly died. He suffered a heart attack during some very extreme turbulence, and there are still some seriously injured people with spinal injuries in hospital in Bangkok, which is where the flight was diverted to. But the Qatar Airways one, it could have diverted to Istanbul for immediate attention. The pilots took the view that they could continue to Ireland, which is what happened. And I hope that the people who were hurt will get better soon. Just a very quick thing. I've, in the past 24 hours, conducted a social media poll in which 5 to 1 of the 4,000 plus people who voted said, yeah, make it compulsory to wear seatbelts when you're on a plane, except when you're getting up and maybe going to the washroom. But whether or not it's compulsory, that's a sensible thing to do anyway.
Well, Simon, thank you very much for all of that. Up next, we're going to be talking about the SNP plan to kick the Tories out of Scotland, but before then, the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Looking ahead to today, it's remaining pretty mixed out there. Further showers for most of us, but in between, we will see some sunshine. And actually, across central and eastern parts of England, a bright start here this morning, but elsewhere, showers developing and they will quickly migrate their way eastwards as we go through the course of the day. Main focus of the showers come the afternoon will be across eastern and northeastern Scotland. Here, risk of some heavy and thundery showers developing. A warning is in force from the Met Office throughout the day. And actually, for all of us, it's going to be a bit of a chillier day compared to the weekend, with highs at best reaching around 17 or 18 degrees. So a bit more detail for this evening. The showers continuing across parts of eastern Scotland. Again, some of these will be heavy and thundery. Across southern Scotland and Northern Ireland, showers a little bit lighter here, but still the risk of 1 or 2 heavier showers can't be ruled out. For England and Wales, the showers gradually easing, but they will be quickly replaced down towards Devon and Cornwall by a more persistent band of rain. And in fact, this band of rain will start to spread its way a little bit further eastwards as we go through the course of the night. At the same time, showers across Scotland will gradually ease, and for many eastern parts, actually, the end of the night turns largely dry and clear. So could just see temperatures dip into single figures here, further west, holding up into double figures. So potentially a bright start across the east on Tuesday, but it won't last. The band of rain across the west will spread its way eastwards across many parts of the UK. Some heavy rain again across parts of southern Scotland and Northern Ireland, but it will turn brighter but showery come the afternoon for Northern Ireland. And for all of us, I think temperatures at best generally only climbing up to around average, but factor in the breeze and rain, it will feel a little bit cooler than that.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Oh my God, are you joking? Not a wine, I never won a penny in my life.
I don't know what to say.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life. Oh my God. Oh God. Oh, it shocks me. This is amazing.
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel. Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 11 a.m. on Monday, the 27th of May. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Tom Harwood, and Dawn Neeson.
Just in case you get confused, we seamlessly linked.
We do look very alike.
Yes. It's an easy mistake to make, yes. Right, OK, trust and security. Speaking this morning, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says his manifesto will focus on the economy, our borders, national security, and he'll fight for you.
That's nice to know. Now, the royals are to face national service. Under Rishi Sunak's new plans, Prince George, Louis and Princess Charlotte will all have to spend a year in the military or volunteer in the community. Thought most of them did the military anyway.
Well, they do. They'll go to Sandhurst, don't they? And a Lib Dem landslide. Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey says his party is getting the best response from voters it has received for a generation.
At least 5 votes. Well, Scotland is facing a Tory wipeout. That's according to the SNP leader, John Swinney, who'll be fighting to stop his own party being wiped out by the look of the polls. But he's saying that he wants to kick the Tories out of every seat in Scotland while campaigning in Dumfries. We'll bring that to you.
I bet you
Lucky
can't. But this is not about what we think, despite what Tom occasionally does think. We want to hear what you think. This is all about your views. So it's very simple to get in touch. Just post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say. But let's go to the all-important news headlines with Tamsin Roberts.
Dawn, thanks very much and good morning from the GB Newsroom. It's just after 11 o'clock. The Labour leader has set out his first steps for government, saying it's country first, party second. Sir Keir Starmer says there was desperation behind the policy, which would be paid for by cancelling levelling up funding and money from tax avoidance that we'd use to invest in our NHS. Rishi Sunak has announced plans to reintroduce compulsory national service for all 18-year-olds, but Sir Keir Starmer has dismissed it.
I do accept the proposition that we need strong defences, and that has to be the first duty of any government. But I think this plan is desperate. I think they are rummaging around in the toy box to try and find any plan that they can throw on the table. I don't think it'll work. You've seen what military experts, those with experience, have said about it. You've seen what the government said about it just a few days ago when they were asked, that would take away from the resources of the military.
Well, the Conservatives have defended Rishi Sunak's plan for compulsory national service. Foreign Office Minister Anne-Marie Trevelyan says the Tories want to make sure Britain is secure.
The rest of the world is in a really rough place at the moment. And we've got to make sure, and that's the work that we do through NATO, the incredible leadership that the UK shows, why it is that we believe these things are important to stand up for. So I'm very surprised by anyone who thinks that those values, defending those values, ensuring our young people are resilient as individuals and as part of a community is something that they would think isn't a good thing.
Police investigating the fatal stabbing of a woman on a Bournemouth beach have released CCTV images of a hooded suspect. A 34-year-old woman was pronounced dead on Durley Chine Beach on Friday night, whilst a 38-year-old woman was hospitalised with serious injuries. Both women are from Poole. A 17-year-old boy was arrested on suspicion of murder and remains in custody. Dorset police are urging anyone who recognises the person in the CCTV picture to get in touch urgently. More than 300 million children a year are victims of online sexual exploitation and abuse. That's according to new research from the University of Edinburgh. It found 1 in 8 of the world's children have been victims of non-consensual talking, sharing and exposure to sexual images and video in the past year. It also estimated 12.5% of children globally have been subject to unwanted sexual talk and sexual act requests by adults or other youths. Melanoma skin cancer cases in the UK are at an all-time high, with nearly 21,000 expected to be diagnosed this year. Cancer Research UK says rates of melanoma have increased by almost a third over a decade. It's understood there's been an upward trend in cases in all ages, but the biggest rise has occurred in adults over 80. Cancer Research says all skin types can get melanoma, but that around 17,000 cases every year are preventable.
Your skin tone does affect your risk of skin cancer. People at the most risk are people with lighter skin tones, so light-coloured hair and eyes as well, lots of moles and freckles, a history of sunburn or a family history of skin cancer. But people with darker skin tones can still burn and can still get skin cancer. Anybody can get skin cancer.
Israeli airstrikes on Rafah have killed at least 35 people, according to the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza. Israel says it wants to root out Hamas fighters, hold up in Rafah and rescue hostages it says are being held in the area. The IDF says the strike was carried out with precise ammunition and on the basis of precise intelligence. Teachers will reportedly be given legal protection from complaints of blasphemy from religious groups under plans being drawn up in the Conservative manifesto. The Times is reporting that schools will receive new statutory guidance that will give teachers the right to freedom of expression. It's understood head teachers will not be able to suspend staff or students in response to blasphemy complaints from religious groups. The guidance will also make clear that schools have no obligation to consult religious and community groups. Those are the top stories, and for all the latest, do sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, though, it's back over to Dawn and Tom.
Welcome to Britain's Newsroom. Now, Ed Davey, the leader of the Lib Dems, is launching his campaign in Scotland. Let's take a listen.
Healthcare, when they need it, where they need it. That's the fair deal that Liberal Democrats are fighting for the people of Scotland, for the people of our great country. So come and join us. This is the time to make it happen. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, there Ed Davey is standing with Alex Cole-Hamilton, who's the leader of the Scottish Labour Party.
And over to Alex.
Who's going to speak now?
First of all, thank you so much. Thank you for being here in Scotland with us as we launch our Scottish leg of the campaign. But thanks also for your leadership. You've given us such inspiration. Overtaking the Conservatives last month for the first time in a generation at the English local elections shows that you've got the beating of the Conservatives in the blue wall. Well, I'm here to tell you that we've got our grappling hooks in the acid yellow wall of the SNP as well. In big parts of Scotland, from Cooper to Cape Wrath, from Mallaig to Mulgai and to Kirkwall, we have the beating of the SNP, to elect local champions who will go to Westminster and increase Britain's international reputation once again, restoring our broken relationship with Europe, but also door by door and street by street, you'll get people like Susan Murray in Mid Dunbartonshire who will work for you, who will fight for your children's education. There was a time when Scottish education used to lead the international league tables, but it's been on the decline under the SNP for the 17 years that they have been in power. There was a time that you could get access to your local GP at the first time of asking. That's almost unheard of these days. And there was a time when you could access an NHS dentist near you. Now, we're standing in Fife today. Fife is a dental desert. There are no NHS dentists taking on new patients in the whole of the Kingdom of Fife. So this is a real focus. At this election, you have an opportunity not just to send a message to the Conservatives who've been in power too long at Westminster, but also a message to the SNP who have let Scotland down for too long.
Well, that was Alex Cole-Hamilton, the leader of the Scottish Lib Dem, speaking in Fife, one of the 4 Lib Dem seats in Scotland. It's held by Wendy Chamberlain, who some people might recognise as one of the more effusive voices on the green benches. But he's looking to destroy what he termed as the acid yellow wall.
It was an interesting turn of phrase, though, wasn't it? I mean, acid yellow. It does make you wonder whether they're actually on acid, some of them, to be honest with you. But, I mean, not the only campaign being launched today. We've also had Keir Starmer launching his campaign today in Sussex. And here is Olivia Utley to explain what exactly he said and what we should make of it.
Well, this was the first time that we'd really seen some meat on the bones of what Keir Starmer is promising. He talked a lot about national security. Now, the Labour Party is worried that this is an area of policy which is deeply, deeply concerning people in the UK, and that it's something which Labour simply isn't trusted on. One reason for that is that the Conservative Party has promised to raise defence spending to 2.5% of GDP, and Keir Starmer has said that he would like to see that done, but he will only do it when economic conditions allow. So instead, what he said today is that he wants to go on a security sprint, as he's calling it, looking in depth at the threats from Russia, from China, from Iran, and trying to work out what to do about it. This might be in part a response to Rishi Sunak's controversial policy idea over the weekend that we should bring back national service for 18-year-olds. Another issue which Keir Starmer sort of touched upon was tax, and today Rachel Reeves has said that she will not be raising national insurance tax or income tax. That's something which Keir Starmer has stopped short of saying so far, but she didn't promise to rule out cuts. There will obviously be complaints today from Labour backbenchers. I expect that the Labour Party here is sort of straying too close to what the Conservatives are offering. We also heard from Keir Starmer a bit more about himself. Now, you and I in Westminster have heard quite a lot about him being the son of a toolmaker, but in the wider public, I think there's an idea that Keir Starmer, who lives in Islington, and who is, of course, Sir Keir Starmer, is sort of posh, who comes from the same kind of background as someone like David Cameron. That isn't true, and that was a point which Keir Starmer was really hammering home today. Interestingly, he did the speech from Sussex in the sort of blue wall of the south. Now, that's not something that a Labour politician would normally do. They're normally up in the north, showing that they're, one of the ordinary people. But Keir Starmer is determined to show that he's a man for sort of middle England, for the middle classes, because he thinks that red wall in the north of England is already won over for Labour, really, and he's looking to make gains in some real Tory heartlands.
Olivia, how do you think it will play out with that red wall, though? I mean, it's what won Boris Johnson the election in 2019. I mean, do you think they will listen to what Keir Starmer has said today and think he is addressing them?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question. I think perhaps what's going to matter more is whether they still want to vote Conservative. Lots of those red wall voters in 2019, Boris Johnson acknowledged it himself, lent the Conservatives their votes. This was a vote about Brexit. It wasn't really a vote for the Conservative Party. And most of the polling suggests that now those voters have gone off the Conservative Party entirely. They are not enamoured with Rishi Sunak in the way that they were with Boris Johnson. So it may not sound as though Keir Starmer is sort of addressing the red wall here, and perhaps he isn't the sort of perfect Labour leader to win over those constituencies in the north of England. But the fact is that they only lent their votes to Boris Johnson in the first place. It was a vote about Brexit, and all of the polling suggests that those seats, most of which are marginal anyway, will almost definitely swing back to the Labour Party. So I think that Keir Starmer is probably right, actually, to be being a little bit complacent about those red wall seats in the north and concentrating again on some of those much more conservative seats in the south of England. As we've seen in multiple by-elections now, Labour is capable of overturning majorities of sort of 20,000 in some places. So really, Labour is now looking to cut into huge conservative majorities.
It's interesting, it was said in 2019 that the reason the Tories won was BBC. Brexit, Boris, Corbyn. Well, they don't have any of those three magic ingredients anymore.
Nope.
And that leads us to perhaps what we're looking at now.
Well, I mean, you know, the latest poll, Olivia, says that voters dislike the Tories even more than they did Corbyn in 2019, which is pretty damning, isn't it?
It is pretty damning. A huge problem, really, for Rishi Sunak. Corbyn was deeply unpopular, and as you said there, Tom, was sort of credited for losing the Labour Party the election, or at least giving Boris Johnson that huge majority. Without Corbyn in play, and of course, we now know that the Keir Starmer has actually expelled Corbyn from the party altogether. He'll be standing as an independent in Islington. And with the issue of Brexit sort of neutralised, Keir Starmer has done a pretty good job of throwing off those Remain credentials and showing himself to be prepared to go ahead with Brexit, at least in some form. It does feel as though the Labour Party really is doing pretty well in those areas in the north of England. It'll be fascinating to see whether they'll be able to replicate some of those, you know, astonishing by-election victories where they overturn huge majorities of sort of 20,000, 25,000, I think we got up to. It'll be interesting to see whether they will be able to replicate that in some of those seats in the south of England. Of course, it is difficult to extrapolate by-election results into general election results because people have all different reasons for voting. But if they did overturn some of those huge majorities, we could really end up with a tiny rump of a Conservative Party in Parliament.
Well, Olivia Utley, thank you for bringing us that stark reality facing so many Conservative MPs. Really appreciate it.
The problem I've got with all of this, Tom, is we have, what, five and a half weeks now? Have we only had half a week? Or a week? Yeah. And after that, we are still going to end up with either Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer. And how many people are actually voting for Labour Party, for their policies, or just simply because they've had enough of the Tories?
It's almost how Theresa May became Prime Minister, right? All of her opponents sort of imploded and stood against one another, took each other out, and then by default she was the last woman standing. Sort of feels that's how we're getting to Keir Starmer.
It's not a great way to win an election. I mean, it's like you must be thinking, well, they're not really voting for us, they're just voting against the Conservatives. But we are where we are.
What a joy to live in a democracy. Still to come, are the Tories facing a wipeout in Scotland? Well, that's what the leader of the SNP thinks, although, must be said, the SNP are facing quite a few problems of their own.
But we also have cheese. We also have
more
cheese.
Importantly.
Please, there is more important. There is cheese. Don't go anywhere. There is cheese coming up. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Well, Welsh farmer Gareth Wyn-Jones is a first-language Welsh speaker and joins us now. Gareth, I mean, A lot of people will be thinking, hang on, this guy is a Welsh teacher. He speaks English. He knew what was on the parking ticket. He's just trying to make a point. He's being a prat, isn't he?
No, hey, come on, mate. I'm a first language Welsh. It's important that we watch after our language and, you know, that everything's bilingual. For us in Wales, you wouldn't go to France and expect your ticket to be in English, would you? You know, English is the most spoken language, but let's watch after these small languages. It's part of our cultural. So, you know, I take my hat off to the guy. Fair play to him to go out and to fight this. But what it's done is put it onto the mainstream media, and you're talking about it, even that you're calling them that. You know, at least we're having a discussion about it, and it's putting the Welsh language in the forefront. And,
so,
you know,
Gareth,
speaking Welsh is important.
Yeah, so Gareth, this is a matter of principle. Is there a sense that the Welsh language is being eradicated in Wales? Is this something that the Welsh people need to rise up against?
Well, Welsh government are trying to, you know, bring a lot more Welsh speaking into our daily life and teach people how to speak Welsh. Well, everything should be bilingual then. And I think, you know, it should start with government. So government should be putting pressure on these companies to make sure everything is bilingual. So I get behind this guy. Fair play to him. It's a good stance, and it puts it in the public eye. Let's have everything in both languages, especially Welsh, because that's my first language. And I'm
you know what? If I was Welsh, if I were Welsh, I think I would agree with you. I think I would agree with you, Gareth.
It depends if you come from Wrexham.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's almost 11:20, and you're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
With Tom Harwood and Dawn Neeson, just in case he's forgotten. We're stunned. We were about to go to the SNP, but they have just stopped talking. Sorry about that. But
it's such a shame that we've missed them. I was really looking forward to hearing John Swinney talk.
What was you saying about him being voted out because he was the most...
He had to resign as leader of the SNP in the mid-2000s because of their dire election results. Some say he was just too boring. Well, joining us in the studio is Matthew Laza and Emma Wolfe.
Who definitely aren't boring.
Who are definitely...
Many things, but not boring.
I don't think being boring prevents you from being in politics at all, does it?
No, it really doesn't.
No, I think it's pretty much...
John Major was
well, one of the issues if we do have a weekly debate is you're going to have Ed Davey, Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak.
That's going to set the Thames on fire.
And it's like, you know, do you want 6 weeks?
And occasionally John Swinney.
Every week. You're not helping here. You're really not helping.
It's not a TV executive's dream, let's just put it like that.
Right.
No women, of course.
Shall we turn to some of the stories...
I'm involved in politics.
that
what
you two
about
have
Harry?
brought in.
What about Harry?
OK, let's start with Harry.
We haven't done anything royal this morning.
Let's start with the royals then.
Okay.
Why not? Take it away.
Well, this is a Telegraph story. I think it's in the Telegraph and online. But this is about the Biden administration kind of resisting calls from Harry's lawyers whether or not this ongoing thing about releasing his visa records over the alleged, in Spare, he admitted to taking, remember his memoir Spare? He admitted to taking cocaine, marijuana and magic mushrooms. And a lot of people are saying, was he honest and truthful in his application, in his visa application? You have to say, have you taken drugs? He said no, and then in Spare he said yes. So I think this is absolutely fascinating. They're saying they can't release these records because there is a stigma attached to law enforcement records. Yes, there's a stigma attached to that, but then don't say... everybody else, if you write yes on a visa application, you will be chucked out of the United States. You will be denied entry. So I think this is fascinating that on this issue of whether there is a stigma for Harry or not, he can have his law enforcement records not released into the public domain.
The bottom line is, do we want him back?
No, actually the bottom line is, was he honest and truthful in his application to the United States?
I suppose there's another argument, which is maybe he was entirely honest and truthful in his application and dishonest in the book.
Which do you believe? I mean, I know which I believe.
So either he did and he was a naughty boy, or he was a naughty boy by claiming he did to spice his book up. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, it would be a legal defence for him in this whole case to say, it was my book, my tell-all book, ghost-written book, which maligns the royal family in all sorts of ways,
off by himself,
isn't entirely true.
But that was part of his defence. That was what one of his legal team actually said.
So what's interesting is it seems to be becoming a political dividing line in the States, because Biden is the administration trying to do Harry a favour by keeping them under wraps, but Trump has promised that he will, the file will be made public if he wins again.
Trump's been very strong on this. He said, if Harry lied, then he's out. Which is, a bit worrying for the rest of us, because where's he going to go? Is he going to come back?
The one thing about America is that politicians make ours look sane, which is saying something.
I'm slightly confused about this whole story, because, OK, sure, Prince Harry has said this. How many pop stars, rock stars, movie stars, like every
the difference is, well, I don't think it's just a British. I think millions of Brits, to be fair to them, lie on the form every year. Millions of people from around the world lie on the form every year. Not, of course,
I'm not going to name any pop star specifically, but I would be mightily surprised if any hadn't indulged in what...
Yes, but of course they haven't given written evidence in their biography that they have, and that's the difference.
It's not whether you have or not, it's whether
you can be caught.
OK, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm pretty sure Ozzy Osbourne might have admitted in the past to have taken some illegal drugs. I'm pretty sure he's been to the
documentary
United States.
footage of him literally doing something. It's so odd, actually.
Yes.
Because I think almost everybody will have said no, nothing, and you literally have to say no, nothing. Taken nothing ever.
And I mean, you look at the kind of Brits who sort of swan down West Hollywood and
but even normal people, not just the celebs and the pop stars, but even normal people.
The problem with this story is if you have taken drugs and you don't lie about it, then it's normally not a problem, as long as you're honest. It's the lying about it. It's whether
and Niall Gardner of the Heritage Foundation, and on very regular on this channel, is pursuing it doggedly. And so perhaps Ozzy Osbourne doesn't have a terrier after him like Niall.
Perhaps.
So firm in his determination.
Shall we return to this country, of course, where day trips have been suggested as a prescription for lonely pupils? What's this about, Emma?
Well, this is about social prescribing. So for older people as well, but for young people, there's this plan which has been, I think it's trailed by the University College London. There's a pilot scheme. It's a really small scheme, sadly, but it's going to be rolled out more widely for children. I think 9 to 13 was the rough age group.
Is there a huge problem of
There is a real epidemic of loneliness, especially since lockdown. If you think about those children, they were quite little when lockdown happened. Suddenly, they were out of school for 2 years at really seminal moments in their development. They were, denied social interaction with other children. So there's a real epidemic, but more widely with mental health amongst young people, children as well. Anxiety, depression, anxiety disorders are spiralling, obesity rates. I think a lot of children are basically indoors staring at screens, not with other kids.
This is a pilot. All right, a lot of young kids are indoors staring at screens and staring at four walls. I have to ask, where are their parents? What are the parents
doing? Dawn, it's very, very lazy parenting. It's very easy to put your child in front of a screen. It's an electronic babysitter. The parenting is the hard bit, which is getting outside, going to the playground, she says, bitterly, in the rain, on a Sunday morning, getting them outside and also taking them to groups, doing things with them. But this is a plan to basically get children who are lonely, who are suffering, and send them on, like, fishing trips and getting them doing things and getting them with other children, and that's the key.
Museums, fishing trips and gardening. I'm sorry.
Needlepoint.
10-year-olds. I mean, just get out and play.
But, Matthew, isn't this just... I mean, we're medicalising... We're calling this prescriptions for children. I mean, isn't this just what parents should be doing?
Well, I think it's what parents should be doing, but also, of course, it's what historically, of course, schools have done and community groups, and quite a lot of hollowing out of community groups and community resources in the austerity years. So I think that some of the things that used to be there haven't been there. Youth services have gone in large parts of the country, so there aren't youth clubs in things in the way that they used to be. So I think this is particularly for those who are kind of experiencing loneliness and need to be with other people. And of course, if your parents are doing it, you're doing it with your parents. You're not necessarily doing it with other people your own, other kids your own age.
Kids need to be with other kids.
Yes, absolutely.
But there are lots of youth clubs. Kids can join the Scouts.
No, actually, I've got a 3-year-old. You can't get them into those kinds of things until 7. There are massive waiting lists. It is really hard. The biggest thing that you guys haven't mentioned is smartphones. I'm afraid children are at school all day. Maybe they're bullied at school all day. Then they come home, they're on Facebook and they're being... But social media has massively changed the landscape for children growing up nowadays. And they are lonely because they're not out. We don't let children play out. Why don't they play out? Because of stranger danger. No. A stranger, you know, it's a lot more dangerous being on the internet than it is being out in the street. Do you remember when you were at school? When you were at school, you come home from school, you take school uniform off and you play out in the street all evening, all day long until Mum said it's time to come in for tea. Children don't do that now.
I think it was in the Times where a journalist tracked how far their grandparents would walk as a child from their home,
They would walk
and
to
then
school.
how far their parents would walk as a child.
People walk miles,
how far they'd let their children. And it's ever decreasing circles.
At my child's nursery, there are parents who are driving them 2 streets in a car, driving them 2 streets to school.
But I want to know... most important, I want to know if Tom was in the Scouts and if Dawn was in the Brownies. Did you get thrown out, Dawn, for being naughty?
How did you know that?
I guess.
How did you know that? No, I was asked to leave the guides after a set because I may have used a bad word. Which is not
like
me.
you, Dawn.
It's really not like me at all. But we are in the run-up to a general election, so I think we're allowed the occasional bad words.
Yes, well, I was
just not on mic.
No, I was. But because there's the Woodcraft vote, which is the co-op's alternative, because some people find the Scouts and the Brownies a bit militaristic. There's the Woodcraft, which is now very fashionable amongst woke parents.
No.
Were your parents woke and saying...
No, they weren't. I wasn't. They weren't. They just
I
didn't do anything.
I was in the Scouts for the 100th anniversary.
But I bet you Keir was in the Woodcraft folk.
And there was an enormous...
We need to find this out.
Jamboree. It was great.
Should we go to Albania quickly? Because we can.
Why not? Let's go to Albania.
So this is a slightly peculiar story in that the Albania is one of the government's great success stories because it's done a deal with Albania and has been able to send back migrants. But to hammer home the point, the government now wants to expose corrupt politicians in a crime state nexus, the whole operation is called, and it is designed to smash organised crime groups, as you've got links to some politicians in Albania and elsewhere in the Balkans, particularly in drug dealing. So maybe it's a sort of sign of... if you remember last week when the election was called, the signs... I know it does, doesn't it? It's only 5 days. In Tirana, the Albanian capital, there were huge signs welcoming David Cameron, and he didn't show up because he had to go and stand... He briefly and then he had to get back on the plane, didn't he?
Cut his trip a lot shorter.
So the government is Albania-obsessed.
but Emma, I suppose Albania is a mark of success. It's one of the reasons why Rwanda is being pushed so heavily, because if you have a place to send people back to, well, the numbers coming for Albania fell by over 90%.
Yeah, so we have got our returns agreement. I was in Montenegro. I drove to Albania for a day trip. It was the most terrifying experience of my life. It is I just wanted another stamp in my passport. It was a fun thing to do. It's quite a scary country. I don't feel scared in central London. I felt quite scared in Albania, I have to say.
The thing is, I mean, we do have a problem with Albanian gangs running the prostitution crime in London and the southeast mostly now.
Yeah.
Can I give you a very quick political fact? Albania has the world's tallest Prime Minister, Edi Rama.
They're really tall. They're really tall. Montenegrins are incredibly tall.
I don't want to be like Angela Rayner and make a short joke, but yeah, I've met him. He's the world's tallest Prime Minister. He styles himself as the new Tony Blair, and I'm sure he's not involved in this crackdown. It's dodgy people.
No, absolutely.
But there is something in tall politicians winning. Donald Trump is hugely tall. Of course, Obama was very tall.
Is it? And our Westminster tallies, Daniel Kaczynski.
Yeah, but Ed Miliband my old boss. Ed Miliband is the tallest person ever to be leader of the Labour Party.
Wow.
Because when you'd meet people on a railway station with them, they ask you 2 questions, they say 2 things, say, oh, he's a lot taller than he looks on the telly, and then they mention his brother. We'll leave that there.
Well, but isn't it interesting? David Cameron was very tall, Tony Blair was quite tall, and now we have a very odd situation where we have 2 particularly tiny party leaders.
I met Starmer the other evening.
A very short man.
I met Keir Starmer the other evening, and he was really small. Really small.
And you don't think it because he's
even smaller
all the time.
9 maybe.
But we've got an era of titchy politicians.
Macron is the same height in France as Sunak. They're apparently exactly the same.
What does that say about all of us? We've gone from having sort of titans to having...
Which is weird, because the population, of course, is getting taller as a whole, but the politicians are getting shorter.
Well, Theresa May was actually quite tall. I don't know if it applies to women, but talking as the next female Prime Minister, I'm going to go for it. I'm tall.
Dawn Newsroom, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well, after all of that, shall we get to your news headlines with Tamsin?
Tom, thanks very much. Here are the headlines at 11:31. The Labour leader has described the Conservatives' plans to reintroduce national service as desperate. The Prime Minister set out proposals to make all 18-year-olds choose between serving in the army or volunteering in their local community. He pledged to make it law if the party wins the election. But Sir Keir Starmer said there was desperation behind the policy and that it would be paid for by cancelling levelling up funding and tax avoidance, which his party would use to invest in the NHS.
Do accept the proposition that we need strong defences, and that has to be the first duty of any government. But I think this plan is desperate. I think they are rummaging around in the toy box to try and find any plan that they can throw on the table. I don't think it'll work. You've seen what military experts, those with experience, have said about it. You've seen what the government said about it just a few days ago when they were asked, that would take away from the resources of the military.
Well, the Conservative Party has defended Rishi Sunak's plan for compulsory national service. Foreign Office Minister Anne-Marie Trevelyan says the party wants to make sure Britain is secure. Meanwhile, the Lib Dems have launched their general election campaign in Scotland. Speaking in Fife, Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey said it was time for change.
The people of Scotland have been doubly let down. Let down by an out-of-touch Conservative government in Westminster and taken for granted by an out-of-touch SNP government in Holyrood. They both have to go. Yeah.
Those are the headlines, and for the latest stories, do sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Well, up at noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain with Emily and today, Patrick.
All a bit confusing.
It's all very confusing. Bank holidays are all tipsy-turvy, topsy-turvy. What's coming up?
We've got a huge amount coming up. I think this dividing line in this election campaign about what to do with young people, what to do with our youth.
The problem of the young.
Yeah. Should they serve or should we give kids the vote? I guess that is the battleground that has opened up. I'm not sure what young people will make of that being the tussle here, but we'll be debating a little of that.
It's going to be massive at this election, isn't it, when you go and vote in the polling booth, whether you want to vote for your child to vote or to serve, I suppose. We're also going to be talking about Nigel Farage's comments over the weekend with Trevor Phillips. Was he actually spot on with what he said? Could he have maybe armed himself with a few more facts? Potentially, dare I say, even Trevor Phillips' own report, actually, would have possibly shut down that debate. Has he opened the door now for, racism allegations, all of this stuff? So we're going to be talking about that. In case you missed it, he mentioned about issues within certain aspects of the Muslim community, so it's always...
But what's really fascinating here is that Trevor Phillips sort of piled into him and said, do you mean Muslims? Why are you talking about Muslims? All the rest of it. Trevor Phillips himself, as you rightly raise, has written this report about how some sections of the Muslim community in the United Kingdom live separate lives, parallel lives, have different allegiances and all the rest of it.
He did a documentary about it. Yeah. He did a documentary about it, and he was also suspended, was he not, from Labour over Islamophobia? Or he had some issues with the Labour Party over Islamophobia. So it's all a bit messy, that one.
And on the very same day, we had that chap walking through Oxford Circus in a Hamas shirt. It could have been his surname, to be fair. It could have been his surname, but it wasn't.
Or it could have been just he's dyslexic and really likes a certain Mediterranean dip.
Hummus, yes.
It could have been. We're also going to talk about the battle for taxation now as well. Labour saying they're not going to increase NI or income tax, but are they about to ruin the state school system, something that would affect literally every single child with what's going on there? And we've got a little bit of light relief at the end, potentially.
We do. What on earth is going on with all this turbulence? Yes. Is it due to the climate? We're going to be playing a little clip of an Irish passenger who has quite the description of what happened on board his flight. It's quite a funny one, to be honest.
But with the turbulence thing, is it just the tragic situation that one man died on a flight and now the media latches on to every single instance of turbulence? It's a bit like dog attacks. They happened all the time, but only after sort of the ban of that breed, the Bully XL, suddenly we get dog attacks reported and push notifications. Is this a media effect?
Well, we're going to find out.
We're going to find out, but also, the climate change researchers have been banging on about this for quite a while. They said that in the last, 20, 30 years, severe turbulence has increased by 55%. That's one study. So we'll get to the bottom of that.
Interesting stuff. Well, that coming up at midday.
With Patrick and Emily, don't miss it. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Don't go too far.
Martin Daubney. Weekdays from 3 p.m.
2,000 football banning orders have been issued to England fans ahead of this summer's Euro 2024 tournament in Germany. But authorities think that more than 300,000 England supporters could go to Germany, with Scotland fans, of course, also expected to travel in huge numbers. Well, I'm joined now by GBNews' home and security editor, Mark White. Mark, welcome to the show. So you went to a press briefing this morning. As I understand, the authorities are gearing up to tackle what they see as a huge wave of potential hooliganism at the tournament. What's the latest?
Well, they're certainly not saying they're expecting hooliganism, and they are preparing for the worst, of course, if it happens, but hoping for the best. They say that in recent tournaments, England fans and, of course, Scotland fans have been pretty well behaved, but there will be very significant numbers attending that tournament, which gets underway in just over 5 weeks' time. That first match is Scotland taking on Germany in Munich, and of course just 2 days later it's England against Serbia near Dortmund. So 300,000 England fans alone they're expecting, because it's so accessible. I spoke earlier to Chief Constable Mark Roberts, who is the national lead for football policing. This is what he told me.
Positive, you know, England fans got a great record at recent tournaments. We know when any number of that people travel, there's always potential for issues, but I think the German authorities are really well prepared. And I think one of the positives, particularly thinking about our fans, Germany's a beer drinking culture, so the police are well aware of dealing with people in the nighttime economy. They deal with plenty of big festivals, so I think we're going to a place that is well suited to work with us to keep everyone safe and make sure there's no issues.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. It is 11:39 and 53 seconds. Not that you want to know that, or that you shouldn't want to know that, because it's a bank holiday and you should be enjoying yourself rather than looking at the clock.
But you should be, looking at the television. I'm reliably informed it is now 11:40. Or 20 to 12, no matter how you want to talk about it. Sorry, should we get to some... Lots of lovely people have been writing into us about the programme today. And Julie has said that Labour's stance on private schools is really appalling. Her 3 children went first on the assisted places scheme. We struggled like hell to get our children through school because we wanted what we thought was the best for them. Me, a teacher, my husband, a fire officer.
You know, this is what really annoys me about this story, Tom, is the fact that, you know, the people are assuming if you send your children to private school, you are loaded. You're not. Lots of ordinary people, so lots of people watching, like Julie, have struggled and really cut their cloth to be able to send
the number
their
of families who choose to not go on annual family holidays.
And it really annoys me. It really annoys me. Meanwhile, Meghan, hi Meghan, happy bank holiday. It says Starmer has proposed, Starmer's launched his campaign today, has proposed absolutely nothing different to the Tories. He has no plan. I would not follow him. He has no leadership skills. I would not vote for him. But come on, he loves the working people. He mentioned it.
He mentioned 12. You were counting. Well done on that. Bob says it's a bank holiday. Why can't the politicians take a day off from hogging the airwaves and give us a break? If we,
Hallelujah.
If it were not for this election, we'd never see them too busy collecting stuffed brown envelopes.
Yes.
No, I think that probably, Bob, you speak for quite a few people
I think
there.
you do. And Emma similarly says, I'm fed up of our useless political system apparently only giving us the option of red or blue, and comments like a vote for whoever else being a vote for Labour or vice versa. We need a change, and we have to start somewhere instead of falling into the old traps. And you have to start wondering whether we are going to have to change something now, because people aren't voting for Labour, they're voting against the Tories, and this has been going on as a cycle endlessly.
Yeah, 'twas ever thus, to some extent.
Get rid of the party in power if they've been there for too long, but you're not actually voting for the opposite number because you don't even know what the opposite number is standing for most of the time.
But now...
good luck, everybody.
To our favourite story of the day.
Jeez!
When you think of extreme sports, maybe you think skydiving, bungee jumps or rock climbing. But today, it's none of those things. It's the annual Cheese Rolling Festival in Gloucestershire, where competitors chased a 3-kilogram double Gloucester cheese wheel down a very steep hill.
Yes. It is. But the health and safety people are already all over this, aren't they?
They are.
They are getting... Yeah, they're saying it's danger. And to be fair, you're looking at pictures now on your screen of lots of people literally throwing themselves physically down a very, very steep slope after a bouncing cheese. Now, people do get hurt doing this, but they do it willingly. They do it because it's a tradition, and they look like they're... That chap doesn't look like he's having that much fun.
And if you want to hurt yourself chasing after cheese, I would argue it is the free-born right of any Englishman to hurt himself or herself rolling down a hill chasing after a cheese. Yes. But the Tewkesbury Borough Safety Advisory Group does not think so. No, this local health and safety board has tried to stop this marvellous annual event, an event that's been going since the 1820s, might I add. And what sour... fun sponges they are.
Well, there was another story similar about, I think, a coastal resort in the West Country where the kids used to throw stuff onto the beach and then run down over the stones and try and collect it. That's been banned in case the children, the youngsters mostly, hurt themselves on a beach.
But children are meant to hurt themselves climbing trees and running through beaches and sort of... rough and tumble is part of childhood.
Yes.
We can't extract that from the human experience.
And it is like, these are traditions, and the fact that we're being bogged down with so much red tape is frankly very ridiculous. We did have our reporter up there to report on this, Tom. Unfortunately, he's hurt himself.
No, we will be a little bit later in the day on the channel catching up with Jack, our reporter
Carson,
in the area, who will be showing us a lot more of this tremendous... Because there is a prize for the person who wins the cheese. This is why they hurl themselves down quite so quickly.
Do they get the cheese?
They get the cheese.
Yeah, OK. Jack was chasing a baby bell somewhere, I think, tripped over and hurt himself. But no, fair play. If you're up there today and you're enjoying that,
But it is right to describe this as an extreme sport. The cheese goes up to 70 miles an hour as it rolls down Cooper's Hill. Now, that's a 200-yard hill, 70 miles an hour. This is a proper sport.
How did it start? You've researched... Tom has researched this, as Tom does. How did it start?
It started in the 1820s, Dawn, when someone rolled a cheese down a hill.
Why did they roll a cheese down the hill, Tom?
I think they did it because it's a marvellous thing to do, and I think people had more whimsy in their lives in the 1820s.
Well, you know what? I don't know about you lot out there, but when we are this close to a general election and we have got politicians telling us all sorts of stuff, but without any detail, rolling a cheese down a hill sounds like a very, very good idea.
Absolutely, and what a marvellous way to kick off Pax Britannica, as it was in the early 1800s, that era of over 100 years where Britain was the undisputed global power in the world. After Napoleon was defeated, the British Empire ruled across a third of the earth.
And we're quite good at cheese as well.
Quite good at cheese.
We are quite good at cheese. Other countries are good at cheese, but I think we still do it best.
Well, up next, shall we talk about the bank holiday and the weather?
Cheer you up even more. Heavy rain has already hit many parts of Britain and will continue this afternoon. Yay! Sit here, watch telly. Emily and Patrick up soon. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office, where there will be plenty more heavy showers on the way for many of us today. These turning heavy and thundery at times, all thanks to this area of low pressure situated across the UK. Various occlusion features pushing their way eastwards will bring a focus for those showers through this afternoon, and it's eastern parts of Scotland, maybe into northeastern parts of England, that we're likely to see those heaviest showers this afternoon, again with some hail and thunder mixed in too. For England and Wales, not quite as as heavy, those showers, compared to what we've seen over the past couple of days, but there will still be a few around, and it'll be feeling a little cooler too, with those temperatures only around 17 or 18 degrees, around about average for the time of year. So those heavier showers across eastern parts of Scotland will continue as we head through the rest of this afternoon. Again, some hail and thunder mixed in into this evening, and they could be quite slow moving, but slowly pushing their way eastwards as we head into the latter part of the day. Some showers across Northern Ireland and northern parts of England too, and again, these pushing their way eastwards into Monday evening. The showers across England and Wales will gradually start to ease as we head into the latter part of the day, but there is some rain arriving out towards the southwest, and that will slowly push its way north and eastwards as we head through Monday evening and into the start of Tuesday. The showers elsewhere do gradually start to ease overnight, so there will be some clear spells around, and under those clear spells we could be turning a little chilly with temperatures dropping into the single figures, but under all that cloud and rain, likely to stay that little bit milder. Temperatures here around 12 or 13 degrees to start on Tuesday. So that does mean it's a bit of a damp start for Northern Ireland, Wales and southern parts of England, and that rain does push its way north and eastwards as we head through Tuesday daytime. Some early brightness across parts of Scotland and northeastern parts of England, but that rain does eventually arrive through the afternoon. Plenty of heavy showers as well across parts of northern England, Wales and southwest parts of England, and temperatures again around about average for the time of year.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Well, Tom's just been giving me a lesson in poetry during the break.
We've both been talking about poetry.
We are very, very cultured. Well, one of us is. Any case, in a more predictable situation, what is a bank holiday washout this weekend across Britain? And it's very likely that it's going to affect most of the country.
Yeah, despite the sunny weather over the last 2 days, the experts say that's all over for now. So, joining us, senior meteorologist at the British Weather Services, Jim Dale. Jim, is summer over? Have we had it? Was that it?
Tom, it's not even started. It starts on June the 1st. This is spring that we're in at the moment, and it has been springing around, to say the least. Look, this day's got showers all over the place. The radar looks like measles, and if you don't look at radars, well, you should look at radars, but if you don't, then you really need one of these. Somebody forgot this week, of course, and paid the penalty. So if you're going out today, and if you're going out tomorrow in the working week, you definitely need one of those. But I've got some good news for the pair of you. And that is eventually we do, as summer dawns on June the 1st.
Right.
Thank you. We'll see summery weather arrive. At last, high pressure coming in. End of this week, into the weekend. It is the wrong weekend in a way, isn't it? We want it on the bank holiday weekend, but it's not quite happening like that. And it stretches all the way into next week as well, as far as 10 days from now. So it's on the horizon at last, where we can get the shorts out and the t-shirts and forget the brollies. We'll get there.
So that's from this coming weekend, is it?
Yeah, I would say it probably kicks in the west from around about Thursday into Friday, and then across the weekend for us all. Big cell of high pressure. The Azores high joining up with the Scandinavian high, so the high will be essentially on top of us. So that's some pretty good news as we start the summer period, for sure.
Do you mean it never lasts long enough? Now, I'm old enough and ugly enough to remember 1976, that glorious long hot summer that people like you have problems with occasionally. Are we expecting a long hot summer, or is it going to be a couple of days sun, then more rain?
Oh. Goodness me. It's lovely seeing quite so many of us.
No, you can talk for yourself. I thought that was frankly quite scary.
That was my perfect television show.
Yeah, it was Tom interviewing Tom. Sadly, it's true of me as well. Sorry about that. Well, I think Jim's just gone and done something with his connection.
I'm not sure it was quite Jim's fault. But it is interesting, isn't it? Last summer was a complete washout. It was a terrible, terrible summer. But do you remember that summer during COVID, the first year of COVID?
That was lovely.
It was gorgeous.
Yes.
I'm hoping that we have a similar one again.
Yes, but that was at the time when we were locked in our houses and you could only go out once a day for a bit of exercise.
Yeah, and then you really saw the
great
divide in the country between those who had gardens and those who did not.
Well, okay, the serious side of all that was that, you know, again, it was the poorer families, and many lived in flats, certainly in the big cities, who couldn't get out. Remember those two little boys that were kicking a football about with their dad because they lived in a grim tower block, and they were threatened with arrest? Two little kids kicking...
Outrageous, especially... Oh, Jim is back, I'm told. Jim, sorry about that. We were saying that this summer we wanted to know, is it likely to be like one of those long, glorious hot summers that we've had in the past?
I was about to say, Tom, before the turbulence arrived, that I did say some months ago that we would see a hot summer. Now, obviously, we're not there yet, and I did expect it to start a little bit earlier. That's been all over the world, to be honest with you. The global heat is massive in places like Mexico, now southern Texas, India, Pakistan, you name it, everywhere virtually, apart from our little quadrant. But look, and I will mention climate change because that's what it's all about. With that kicking in, expectations are that we will dip in and dip out. Perhaps not like a 76. I remember sitting in the streets, Dawn, as a very young boy, just wondering what the hell was going on. And, you know, it felt like holidays lasting forever because it kicked in with a 6-week holiday, didn't it? The school holiday. So that was extreme, to say the least. I think what we'll see more of this time around is short spurts. In other words, a week of really intense hot weather and then back to square one and then back, you know, and bobbing around like a temperate latitude does. Before I go, though, I should mention a couple of things. Number one, massive tornado activity last night in the United States, Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, more than 15 people dead. More than 15 people dead. So there are things going on in other parts of the world that we're not necessarily picking up on our own radar. Maybe that's yet to come in terms of what lies ahead. We will see. The other thing to say is I had to laugh a little bit. I know I won't go too political on this, but Richard Dagside going on about volcanoes being the reason for climate change. I'll just say a big no, OK? I'll leave it at that.
OK, well, that is all we have time for. Thank you so much for joining us, Jim, and everyone else on the show. And Dawn, it's been a pleasure.
It's been huge fun, and thank you for the poetry lesson.
Here's the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Looking ahead to today, it's remaining pretty mixed out there. Further showers for most of us, but in between we will see some sunshine. And actually, across central and eastern parts of England, a bright start here this morning, but elsewhere showers developing and they will quickly migrate their way eastwards as we go through the course of the day. Main focus of the showers come the afternoon will be across eastern and northeastern Scotland. Here, risk of some heavy and thundery showers developing. A warning is in force from the Met Office throughout the day. And actually, for all of us, it's going to be a bit of a chillier day compared to the weekend, with highs at best reaching around 17 or 18 degrees. So a bit more detail for this evening. The showers continuing across parts of eastern Scotland. Again, some of these will be heavy and thundery. Across southern Scotland and Northern Ireland, showers a little bit lighter here, but still the risk of 1 or 2 heavier showers can't be ruled out. For England and Wales, the showers gradually easing, but they'll be quickly replaced down towards Devon and Cornwall by a more persistent band of rain. And in fact, this band of rain will start to spread its way a little bit further eastwards as we go through the course of the night. At the same time, showers across Scotland will gradually ease, and for many eastern parts, actually, the end of the night turns largely dry and clear. So could just see temperatures dip into single figures here, further west, holding up into double